This episode of Unregistered is sponsored by HelloFresh. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. 3 weeks ago, a man drove 6 hours from Yuma, Arizona to Los Angeles to attend the Renegade University weekend. Now, as many of you may know, Yuma is on the border with Mexico, and it's where most of the illegal immigrants cross over into the United States. This guy told me he was a fan of the podcast and had listened to every episode. And so when I asked him what he did for a living in Yuma, I was totally shocked when he told me that he worked for the Border Patrol, because my views on immigration are for open borders, and I've been very public about that. It turns out that over the last couple of years, he's been rethinking what he does for a living, which he said is chase people. And in listening to the podcast and from gathering information from other sources and just doing a lot of thinking on his own, he was coming to the conclusion that he needed to leave his job, that he couldn't work anymore chasing people. Now, this is a very difficult decision for him because he's worked at the Border Patrol for the last 6 years, and prior to that, he mostly worked in the military. So his skills are not immediately transferable to other occupations. So he had come to the Renegade University event in large part to make sure that he was making the right decision intellectually and also to figure out what to do next. So we did cover a lot of the basic arguments for looser immigration laws or for open borders. There are many good economic arguments for open borders. There are also many good arguments against open borders. But for me, what it comes down to is something that I just find absurd, which is that by sheer dumb luck of being born in this particular place on the planet, have the right and the power to determine whether certain people can live in certain places. One can certainly argue that it might be better for me, economically or otherwise, to live in a country that bars immigration or limits immigration. Now, I don't believe any of those things. I'm grateful that I live in a country that allows as much immigration as it does, and I wish we had more. But underneath those arguments, and you hear this all the time, this is the common claim, is that we as Americans, as members of this nation state, have an inalienable right to stop people from crossing over that border down there. A border that didn't always exist, separating one nation that's only been around for a couple hundred years from another nation that's only been around for a couple hundred years. So what on earth is inalienable about any of that, about those nations, that border, or my right to stop people from one nation entering into the other? I don't see anything there that was granted to us by God. I don't see anything that comes from nature. Nothing that is absolute, universal, and sacred. All these things are obviously inventions that serve particular purposes. Now, I'm happy to talk about whether those purposes serve my interests, but don't tell me I have some God-given right to stop people like Maria de la Luz and Lorenzo Arellano from coming from a mountain town in Zacatecas in Mexico to Orange County. And if I had exercised that right, if I had stopped them from coming here, we wouldn't have their son. We wouldn't have one of the very few journalists in this country who I consider to be a real renegade, a journalist who hasn't merged his identity with the establishment, a journalist who doesn't care very much about following the proper rules of journalistic etiquette. We wouldn't have Gustavo Arellano. So I moved to LA in 2008, and right then this guy was blowing up in LA. His name was Gustavo Arellano. He had just published a book called Ask a Mexican, which was a collection of his columns in the OC Weekly, Orange County Weekly, which is the alt weekly in Orange County. And he, in my world, was the man when I got here. And I just noticed something about him. I had moved here from New York. I noticed, well, let me say this. When I moved to LA, the thing that I really missed was the intelligence, a particular kind of intelligence of people in New York City. And I felt like as soon as I got off the plane almost, I felt the IQ drop. And it was just the way people would talk and think. And pretty much everyone in New York was a fast talker, fast thinker, quick-witted, smart, funny all the time. And I have to say, Gustavo, you remind me of New York Jews in particular.
I don't know. Hey, you know what? Woody Allen was always one of my favorite filmmakers. Annie Hall to me was my life story right there, with the women, with the intelligentsia, with No, people have called me like Woody Allen, but the comparison I get to more is Billy Crystal, which I hate because I can't stand Billy Crystal.
I do see that.
Yeah, where do you see it? This is what people have never, maybe because I don't appreciate Billy Crystal. So they mean it as a compliment. So what's Billy Crystal about me?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of it until you said it. It's your fault. But I guess there's sort of a style. I don't know. Forget Billy Crystal.
Sure.
There's hardly anyone in LA, like a true, or you're from Orange County, but Southern California. I mean, I can't even think of anyone else really I know of, at least in the public sphere, who reminds me of not just New York Jews, but sort of New York people.
Yeah.
But that kind of intelligence and the way you present yourself. And, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no. I'm a nerd. First and foremost, I'm a nerd. But I'm not one of these nerds that, I don't know, growing up Mexican, growing up working class, but then growing up surrounded by books, but also growing up surrounded by, macho cousins and all that, and living in that world, I think it's made me a type of person where, I'm a nerd, but I'm also real, as they say, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's absolutely no explanation for you.
Okay.
Right? I mean, based on what I understand of your biography, and I've read your memoir, and I know a lot about you, there's no way to explain why you are what you are, right?
I guess. I mean, you're a product of your upbringing. So my upbringing was, son of immigrants, Mexican immigrants. One who came to this country in the trunk of a Chevy. The other one was picking strawberries and garlic at age 9 up in Gilroy. So you grow up, and then you grow up in a neighborhood in Anaheim that's just everyone in that neighborhood are people from the villages of your mom and dad. So you definitely grow up with a sense of identity, of being someone. And, so for me, it was always Anaheim. It was always Orange County. But also growing up, just reading voraciously. My mom would always, I talk about this in my second book, Orange County Personal History, how my mom would drop us off at the library at age 4 and just spend the day there. So I would just consume the shit. But again, not the nerd shit. Like growing up, all I would read would be sports. Like I know way too much about sports for someone who can't play worth a damn of anything.
Okay, I figured it out.
Okay.
I now understand why you are like Billy Crystal and Woody Allen. Guess who their parents were? They were immigrants. They were immigrants who were poor.
Yeah.
They were immigrants who were poor and considered to be not white. They were immigrants who were poor, considered to be not white, and inferior.
Yeah.
They were outcasts in this society. They weren't granted real first-class citizenship, at least culturally and socially, until after World War II. So their parents also were not intellectuals. In fact, they were anti-intellectual, I believe. Generally speaking, that whole generation, of Jewish comedians and entertainers and intellectuals, in fact. In fact, I was just reading about the neocons, Norman Podhoretz and Crystal. Yeah. So those guys come from really, really rough, probably a rougher neighborhood than the barrio in Anaheim where you grew up, in Brownsville, Brooklyn in the 1930s. I mean, that's when the organized crime, Murder Inc. ran the place.
Yeah.
Jewish mafia.
Yeah, Meyer Lansky.
And their parents were totally working class. They worked in factories just like your mother did. And they were anti-intellectual, or at least non-intellectual, didn't want their kids to go to college. And those guys went on to become big intellectuals.
Yeah.
So, I guess maybe that's it. But again, the opening scene in your memoir is the kitchen or the living room in your house, right? And it's like your brother, was it your brother? He's wearing sunglasses indoors, right?
Yep.
Which I recently found out that's the ultimate Mexican thing. There's a fighter in the UFC, Tony Ferguson, and he wears
from Costa Mesa.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't know that. He's one of my favorite fighters, but he wears sunglasses all the time indoors. And I heard someone say, "Yeah, that's too Mexican. That's too Mexican, Tony. You're never going to be a superstar if you keep doing that." But so your brother's there with his sunglasses on indoors, and he's just really, really interested only in the Raiders.
Yep.
Which, when I think, if you say to me Mexican American and I have to give you just one word, it would be Raiders.
So I'd say Dodgers.
Yeah.
Doyers.
Yeah.
Doyers.
Yeah, for me it was always Raiders. That's the first thing I noticed about Mexican Americans was just what's with all the Raiders caps and shirts and Jesus, man. But and there you are in the scene in your house, reading the New York Times on your laptop.
Yeah.
So how? Like, why? I mean, you know, you I can't even explain it for Billy Crystal and Woody Allen and Irving Kristol and Norman Podhoretz. You can't really explain. I mean, there is sort of an intellectual tradition among Jews, right? Which maybe they picked up somehow from their rabbis or something, or just the air, you know, the Jewish
Rabbinical,
air. Yeah, something like that. But for Mexican Americans or Mexicans, but in particular with your parents, and your father was against you going to college, right? So there's like at least a non-intellectualism. Clearly, like where do you get that?
Yeah, it's interesting because in Mexico, the far more public intellectuals, or the public intellectual plays a far bigger role in day-to-day life, kind of like in France than it does in the United States. So you still have Carlos Monsiváis, you had Octavio Paz, Jose Vasconcelos, and all that. So you have this great literary tradition, and then once you cross the border, it's like, fuck it, we're going to be Americans. Fuck intellectualism, fuck all of that. You know, the parents, they do want you to be educated, but more importantly, they want you to work. Legally, I was working from age 16 on. Illegally, I was working 9 years old with my dad, weekends, and then my dad was a truck driver, so I'd help him. He's still a truck driver, but he used to drive flatbed trucks. So you'd get the straps, you'd throw them over. It was my job to winch them in. I could barely reach it. Then, you know, I started getting bigger and bigger and just would winch them more and more and more. But like that taught me the value of hard work, just straight up. But at the same time, I would see that, and I told my dad, like, when he didn't want me to go to college, it was for a specific reason, because he wanted me to be a truck driver, and not just be a truck driver like him. He wanted me to have a company, both of us together create a company. And thank God that didn't happen, because the stupid clean air regulations in San Pedro destroyed the truck driving industry forever. It's interesting. 2008, you know, that's when you first read about me. That's when I came out with Orange County Personal History. Around that time, that's when my dad lost his job. He was an independent contractor, and because of all these clean air regulations created by environmentalists, politicians, and the unions, they destroyed the truck driving industry as it is, to the point where it's a shit storm that it is today. But anyway, so from all of that, I just didn't want that life. I did not want to work my ass off for my dad got a good working class wage, but it was way too much, like 6 days a week, 18-hour days, and he was only short haul. So he was only between the triangle of Orange County, where he was based. The company was in Wilmington. So go Wilmington, San Pedro, then the Port of Los Angeles. Just that triangle, but still not much shit.
And he was an independent operator.
Contractor, yep.
Yep. And so you are sitting across from a historian of the Teamsters.
Yeah.
That's my first book. Jimmy Hoffa,
right.
The Teamsters and Trucking. Yeah. So I know that stuff, at least from the 40s and 50s and 60s, not when your dad was doing it. But all right, let's back up. Let's see if we can figure this out. how you got to be who you are. Because it really is, it's curious to me. I mean, I don't know exactly how I got to be who I am. Although it's a little easier because my parents were intellectuals.
Yeah.
But, I want to say another thing quickly.
Yeah.
You and I had exactly the same high school GPA.
No way.
2.4.
Yeah.
Right on. Which is, by the way, so this is another thing, and we will back up and give some structure to this. So I've done about 31 or 2 interviews with people so far for this podcast, and the vast majority of them, I mean, they're all super smart, basically public intellectuals or artists or comedians or something, people who work with their minds, make money, they're paid for their minds, right? The vast majority of them were fuck-ups in high school, just like you and me, and it's really amazing, and I love that politically, obviously.
Of course.
But it's just I didn't expect it. I assumed that most of them would have actually done well in high school, but the vast majority don't. I keep running across people like that who just hated school and then ended up doing stuff like what you do. Yeah. It's really interesting. All right, let's back up. Okay, so the quick byline, right, or the quick bio would be you have been the columnist, editor-in-chief, and publisher. Oh, we didn't even tell people. You just a big change in your life just happened.
Oh, yeah.
Publisher and editor-in-chief of the OC Weekly until 2 weeks ago.
Until a month ago, 5 weeks ago at this point. October 13th will be a dark day, not a dark day, let's say a transformative day in my history. The only job I ever had as an adult was OC Weekly. Once I graduated from college from UCLA, I became a staffer. Then I ended up becoming editor for about 6 years. And I in that time, I did a column called Ask a Mexican, which got me a lot of attention, syndicated nationally, a lot of appearances on television, on radio, all over the place. So that was how people knew me nationally. And then, of course, I did a book called Taco USA, but that's a little bit besides the point right now. But yeah, it was my dream job. It was the only job I ever wanted because I'm born and raised in Orange County. Orange County is a cesspool of corruption, a cesspool of stupid liberals and even stupider conservatives who cannot stand either side being made fun of, and that's what we did incessantly at the OC Weekly. And then my former owner said, "Well, we're not making the money that we should be," which that doesn't tell me anything. I said, "Well, and so he said you have to cut your editorial budget in half." So basically, that means lay off half the staff. And I crafted a plan for him, and I said, if you don't like my plan, then you do not, or then I will resign because obviously you have no faith in me and I'm not going to be with people who have no faith in me. And so I sent that to him it's so wired in my mind just because it's a comedy act at this point. I sent it to him on September 5th. Him and his lieutenant, who looks just like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, they did not even so much as see me in the office, let alone acknowledge what I sent them until October the 12th when I sent them an email saying like, hey guys, tomorrow was the deadline. What are we going to do? Let's meet at 11 o'clock. We met at 11:15. When I got to the office, I had already been locked out of the office. And so I resigned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It goes deep.
So I think this is great. Because you are now free, and I was just telling you off the mic before we started that there's no question that you need to be doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly what that's going to be.
Not yet.
But I really love the idea of Gustavo Arellano just on his own with his own brand, doing his own stuff, whatever it is. Can't wait. In very typical Arellano fashion, this happened, this went down, you lost your job, you lost sort of your career essentially, or at least that career.
Yeah.
And you wrote this brilliant piece explaining that it was inevitable, and it's this really harsh but totally right on, I thought, critique of the alt weekly world, which I used to love and aspire. I wanted to be you.
Wow.
When I was in college in the 1980s, I read the Village Voice.
Of course.
And I was like, oh man, this is it. This is it. These are the smartest, best writers, best intellectuals. This is cool. They wrote about pop culture in really intelligent ways that made it important, right? And explained why pop culture was important. And I aspired to be a Village Voice writer or an alt weekly writer. But you said that those guys were all like baby boomers who were unoriginal and just sort of let themselves die.
Yeah.
Right. But let's get into that later. So now let's back up and let's start from the beginning. So there's a mountain town in Mexico, right, where it all starts. Which one?
Two of them. Two villages. One from my mom is El Cargadero, and the other one, one village away, or two villages away, is where my dad's from, Homulquillo, the state of Zacatecas. Mountainous. We're most famous for cactus and for loving pumpkin seeds so much that our word for pumpkin seed is just seed, semillas. Like we when we say semillas, it just means pumpkin seeds. Like if you're going to have sunflower seeds, you're going to say semilla de girasol, or like you're going to specify, but when it's just semillas, it's semillas. It has an official name, pepitas, which all the hipsters use, and I despise that word, pepitas, because I'm like, no, they're not fucking pepitas. They're semillas. They're just seeds, damn it. That's what we're most famous for, our love of cactus and our love of seeds.
Huh. Roast them in the oven with some salt and oil?
Yeah. Or you just, you dry them out. You leave them out in the sun. You dry them. You can just eat them raw, maybe a little bit of salt. I love seeds so much. I love pumpkin seeds so much. I eat them shell and all.
Huh.
La cáscara, just shell and all. That's how much I love them.
Wow. You really are Mexican.
Zacatecano way.
So what am I supposed to call them now?
Semillas, just semillas.
Semillas, okay.
Yeah.
No longer pepitas.
Fuck pepitas.
Fuck pepitas. All right. So that's where your parents are from.
Uh-huh.
And your mother immigrated legally, correct?
Mm-hmm. Because my grandmother was an anchor baby.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So you're just full of illegality here. Even on your mom's side, she was the good one.
Yeah.
Your dad, on the other hand, came across several times right before he finally settled here.
Every which way but loose.
Yeah, amazing. And the last one, but we'll tell the stories. I mean, how he how he did it.
And the best part about me recounting this is like the joy. All my uncles, when they talk about how they crossed into the United States illegally, they make it seem like an adventure. So yeah, now it's different. Now, I mean, gosh, you got to pay $7,000.
Like a fun adventure.
Yeah, like
really?
Like
That's how they talk
Pee-wee's
about it?
Playhouse, like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. The first time my dad came was 1969. He was 18 years old. He was stuffed into the trunk of a Chevy. It was him, his cousin, and another guy, and they paid a hippie girl from Huntington Beach and her pocho boyfriend $50 a piece.
Pocho means
assimilated Mexican. It used to be a slur. Now it's just an insult more than anything. But you can call yourself a pocho. You're fine. But yeah, the Chevy went from Tijuana all the way to Chinatown in Los Angeles. And just to show you how much things have changed. Border Patrol sees a nice white girl, hippie girl, driving a Chevy. They didn't even pop the trunk. And they were just right there. It wasn't one of those things like you see where people are sewn into couches or into the seats of a car, or sometimes people actually hide inside the mortar, try to sneak into this country. No, just right there in the trunk of a Chevy. That's the first time my dad came. And the funniest thing, the best thing about that story, he remembered a song, and he just knew it was the Beatles. And so my dad, because, I would always have my dad retell the story again and again. And he's like, yeah, and he couldn't remember the name of the song, but he knew the melody. And the lyrics that he made up for it was like, Tony in San Antonio. And that's all he remembered. The one song that he remembered when he was in trunk. Then one time I'm playing the Beatles, because the Beatles, my favorite group of all time, I was playing I've Just Seen a Face. Which was on the Help album, and my dad's like, that's the song. That is the song. I'm like, where'd you get Tony in San Antonio from Falling Yes, I'm Falling? But anyways, that was the first time he came here. Another time he jumped the fence back when it was just a chain link fence right there on the border. Another time he cut a hole through the fence because he didn't want to jump no fence. Another time he just crossed the desert kind of out more towards Tecate. That's like deep, deep desert right there, Imperial Valley, around that area.
That's where people die.
That's where people die, exactly. And he did it in the middle of July all by himself.
Wow.
Another time, the best one was when the U.S. government got him for identity theft, but it's not identity theft when your cousin lets you borrow your passport, They looked exactly the same. And the worst thing about it was my dad, the airplane trip that he took was from Tijuana to San Diego. That's like a minute.
Yeah, I was gonna
it's
say.
like the dumbest thing. And literally, he makes it all the way through and finally gets on the tarmac. Border Patrol is right there. I don't know how they found out, but they got him. They sent him to El Centro. So spent 6 months in El Centro.
What's El Centro?
Oh, El Centro is a nowhere town out in the Imperial Valley, close to the border. There's a pen out there, federal penitentiary out there. And so he got sent there for 6 months. And then the last time he came illegally, he crawled through a sewer for an hour, pitch dark, quarter filled with sewage. He couldn't stop because there was people behind him. Once he went in, he just crawled and crawled and crawled, and he popped down in San Isidro right next to a McDonald's.
Just to be clear, you're talking about him crawling through a pipe for an hour that was filled with piss and shit.
Yes, piss and shit, exactly. On all fours. Yeah, you tried doing that and make it in an hour, and yet once he came in, he started working.
Well, you know what we value more than anything in this country? Hard work.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, before you even got here, or to get here, talk about hard work. That is the hardest work.
Exactly. Unless they steal your job, then you don't value that hard work.
I would think that's one of the major themes in your whole life. Including with your parents' lives, is just work. All of you, including you. I see this. It just sort of comes out of you, and you're highly productive.
Yeah.
Always have been. But and he settles in Orange County.
He actually first moved to Los Angeles. He used to get drunk with Oscar de la Hoya's dad.
Really?
Oh yeah, because they lived in the same neighborhood right there in East Los Angeles.
Oh damn!
My dad and all my uncles, and they were all illegal. From my mom's side, they were all legal because of my grandmother's American citizenship. They're all permanent residents when they came in. On my dad's side, every single one of them was undocumented. God bless them for that. My grandpa, my grandma, everyone just came in their own way. So then he eventually moved to Santana, though, my dad, in Orange County, because he had a job at a carpet cutting factory. Royalty Carpets, which is still there in Irvine. And so he ended up in Santana. And it's funny because now downtown Santana is totally gentrified, all these hipsters. But my dad remembers it when it was just nothing but Mexican bars. So I did an article earlier this year for the OC Weekly about the last Mexican beer bar in Santana. Like, it was the end of an era. And it really was a mixture of hipsters, but also, the Santa Ana City Council, and then you had Carrie Nations just saying, oh, these Mexican immigrants, they're just drunk all the time. They're this, and that. And my dad, you get him talking about those days. The best part was I told my dad, "Oh, I got papi, like that. Like, tell me all the names of the bars you used to go to." Then he starts going, El Azteca, El this. The best one was El Infierno, the Inferno. Like, that's a great name for a bar right there. But no, so he ended up in Santana. He ended up meeting my mom in Anaheim someone told me what it was. I think it was an American Legion Hall. No, it was something else. But nowadays, it's basically an auto zone. Mm-hmm. So there was a building there. And so my mom met my dad at a quinceañera there in 1977, even though, again, they came from villages, just two villages apart from each other. So they had to come all the way to the United States.
Oh, they didn't know each other at all?
Oh, no, not back home.
Wow.
My dad knew some of my uncles, but they had never met each other until they got to Anaheim.
Was there a migration pattern from those villages to that neighborhood?
Absolutely.
In LA?
No.
In Anaheim?
Well, just like in previous generations of immigrants, there's always going to be chain migration.
I always find that fascinating.
It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Not just neighborhoods, but also occupations.
Uh-huh.
I love charting like which ethnicity, which immigrant group goes into which occupation,
exactly.
right? And how that happens. Yeah,
all of County Cork moved to, a certain section of Hell's Kitchen back in the 1850s or whatever. And so same thing with Mexico. So from Zacatecas, a shitload of people from Zacatecas historically would go to California, especially Los Angeles. And then from my mom's village specifically, they all ended up in Anaheim. And we have a pattern of migration going there to the 1890s of people coming in. And, historically, you go for a couple months, you go back home, go for a couple months, come back home. Then Mexican Revolution happens, pushes everyone up. My grandpa was in Anaheim already, my mom's dad. He was in Anaheim already by the 1920s. And then he ended up going back to get married. And then finally they moved permanently to Anaheim in the 1960s. But you just have this Anaheim, from the small little village population, no more of 300 at its height. There's at least 1,000 people from now living in Anaheim alone. Just
wow.
And these are immigrants, the children of immigrants, and we all have this identity. And then so for my dad's village, though, Humulquillo, that's different because most of those people ended up in the San Fernando Valley around Pacoima and also East Los Angeles. And then from El Cargadero, almost everyone ended up in Anaheim. It's weird. Anaheim, Portersville in Central California, and then Fremont. In Silicon Valley. It's just weird how those things work out. It's always one person who goes off.
Exactly. So one person, whoever it was, we don't know probably, right? The first one. And why did they go there? You know what I mean? I'm always curious about that. Why did that one guy from that village in Mexico go to Fremont, California, which is the East Bay where I'm from?
Okay. So, all I know about my grandpa is that when he came here, he was only 12 years old, and he ended up living with an aunt who had already been living in Anaheim for 40 years. So who's that chain? Who's that chain?
Why did that happen? It's just a fascinating unknown story. I mean, no one knows that probably.
Yeah, no, you'd be surprised at enough digging. The reason there's a shitload of people from the state of Hidalgo in New York City is because two brothers answered an ad that was placed in a Mexico City newspaper in the 1940s by an Italian construction company or an Italian construction owner. And he needed people hey, work in the winter. So these two brothers answered the ad, went up to New York City in 1942. They thought it was cold as fuck, but the money they made was amazing. So they go back to their little village and say, hey, let's bring more of those people. It was, I can't remember the professor who discovered this, but if you dig deep enough, you could find anything in this world. I'll find one day from El Cargadero. Who was that pioneer who came here and why?
I just love it. Yeah, the way these populations emerge and are fostered over generations. But so let me interject a little political history here.
Sure.
Right. So your dad first jumps the fence or goes around it or whatever he did or cut through it.
No, first he was in the trunk of a Chevy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But there was a border patrol.
Oh yeah.
Then okay. And that was in 69.
69. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really important. There was no border patrol before 66, 65. So the 65 Immigration Act, the famous Hart-Cellar Act, right, which was the great liberal reform written mostly by Teddy Kennedy, widely hailed as eliminating the National Origins Act, the quotas that were imposed on various countries for immigration to keep the Jews and the Italians out.
Exactly,
right?
That's absolutely true.
And the Slavs and all that.
Don't forget the Greeks.
And the Greeks, all the swarthy and untrustworthy commies, et cetera. Yeah, so that was the law from 24 to 65. Each nation had a specific quota attached to it, which was specifically, explicitly designed to keep particular people out. And it was all completely racist from top to bottom against people we now consider white.
Of course.
Fascinating. What even I didn't know until fairly recently, was that there was no cap in that law for migration from Latin America. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
I just always assumed that we were part of the quota as well.
Dude, this is the whole story here. This is, no, really. And I'm a historian. I didn't know this either, so I'm not blaming you. But no, there was no cap on immigration from Latin America in that law. Why? Well, you kind of do know this, right? Because we needed all that cheap labor.
Yep.
And so there was the Bracero program off and on during that time, which they would allow people to come in to work just seasonally, and then they could, there was a sort of a time limit on their visa. But generally, there just was a relatively free flow. Well, there just was no policing of the border.
There was no reason to. There
was no policing. People don't know this. Before 1965, there was no policing at all of the border with Mexico.
The only reason
you could just walk right across at any time. Yeah.
My grandpa, when he came to this country in 1918, they went through El Paso. They literally put a penny in a slot machine. There's your passport. Hello, welcome to America. The only reason you even have a border patrol or even an immigration task force was to keep out the Chinese. The Chinese in 1920s, because they're fleeing Mexico because we wanted to kill them all. So they're coming in. But, the United States at the time, of course, California especially hated the Chinese. Well, at that point, they hated Japanese more than Chinese. But we had already aged out the Chinese. We're like, okay, because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. But they're like, no, we can't have any more Chinese coming in. So let's just let's clamp down on the border there.
So here's what I've been trying to shout from the rooftops recently, because I'm so frustrated with the immigration debate. So I'm an open borders guy,
of course.
Just so we know where I am on this.
Love it.
Well, I'm not sure you do, but anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But here's what no one seems to know, right? The Hart-Cellar Act of 1965, the Immigration Act of 1965, authored basically by Teddy Kennedy, liberal Democrats. It was a completely liberal Democrat Congress that passed this. This was a liberal Democratic bill. Became law. It's still the law. Okay, so instead of having these racist quotas, right, which are attached to there's different quotas for each country, right? Because we're liberal egalitarians, we're going to put the same quota on every country. Essentially, is how it worked. It was modified somewhat, but basically that's what it was. Okay, so it was about 20,000 per country, or it was anyway. It was made egalitarian, equal, right? Well, here's the problem, of course, right? There are some people from Liechtenstein and Portugal who want to immigrate. They are far fewer in number than people from Mexico who want to come here. So that quota is still the law for Mexican immigration, which is about 20,000 people a year. Now they also allow immigration for direct family members. Okay, that has meant in recent years, for instance, that the last numbers we have, I believe, was about 2 years ago, 65,000, I believe, people from Mexico were allowed to legally immigrate into the United States in that year. 65,000 people. Guess how many people applied for legal immigration in that year? 1.4 million.
Wow.
And of course, we also know many people either just didn't bother applying and they just came over, or they didn't try because they knew it was so difficult, right?
Yeah.
So that 1.4 million, of course, represents many more people as well.
Yeah.
So what the very few smart historians have said about this is that, of course, that law really punished Mexicans and Latin Americans, right? Generally. And here's the other thing it did. No one understands. This is the thing. It required the enforcement of the border. So the Border Patrol was created then because now we have to make this law real.
Yeah.
And we can't just let Mexicans come in whenever they want to. And so the Border Patrol was created, and the term and category illegal immigrant was created during that time. Popularized, here's the other, and you know this part, I know you know this part. That term, illegals, the even more, derogatory term, was popularized by Cesar Chavez.
Yep.
Who was, of course, a union leader who wanted to keep the illegals out because they were competing for the jobs with his members in the UFW, United Farm Workers.
Yeah, they were scabs. Escuintles, that's what you call them in Spanish, like literally scabs.
So Donald Trump, right? The origins of the Donald Trump immigration discourse, 100% liberal Democrat. And with Chavez, kind of a socialist Democrat. No one knows this. So what Trump is doing and has said he wants to do is simply enforce the Democrats' law.
Yeah.
That's all, So I'm like, But all we are concerned about is these insults, right? That we're insulted by being called illegals and, oh my God, it's so terrible.
Yeah.
I'm like, so do you want to have a cap on immigration or not? Because your party does.
Yeah.
You know, I want to talk to liberals about this. They have for 50 years, and they keep renewing this act over and over again, and then putting further restrictions on immigration from Latin America. That's Democrats. It's Republicans too, for sure. It's bipartisan, but primarily
it's the
Democrats.
Republicans who get all the attention for being, for their stupid rhetoric, but it's the Democrats who secretly are building the fence. I mean, you had fucking Clinton with NAFTA. NAFTA was the worst thing that ever happened in Mexico. The reason you have all this migration over the past 20 years was because all these, what do you call them? Just like family farms just went under the fucking tsunami of cheap corn from Mexico. Just put all these corn people out of business. Let's all go up to the United States because we have nothing else here in Mexico.
It put family farmers out of business in Mexico.
In Mexico,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The devaluation of the peso.
Makes sense.
All of that. But yeah, it was all Clinton. Liberals love the Clintons. I've always despised the Clintons. They are just terrible, terrible people.
Not to mention that they began the wall. They began building the wall. Except they just call it a fence, so it's totally different than when Trump's talking about. But look at the damn thing. At least part of it is clearly, 20, 30 feet high?
Yeah.
It's a fucking wall. It's not even a chain link fence. It's like a solid structure for much of the border. Yeah. But yeah, man, so I'm always so frustrated by this. I'm like, so it's the law is the problem. These people actually are illegal, but that's because of the law. So stop talking about, somebody's presumed racism. Stop trying to find the racism inside the guy.
Yeah.
He's simply enforcing the law. They actually win the argument, unfortunately. You got to talk about the law and change the law.
Yeah. No, and that's all it is, the law. I personally think Trump only focuses on that because because that was a winning issue for him. That's the only reason he did it. If someone told him you can win by just declaring amnesty for everyone, he would do it in a heartbeat. In Spanish, in Spanish the word is convenenciero, but in English, I don't know what the word is, but it basically means like they want to have it both ways, and that's all they want to do. Like have it both ways, and only the way it appeals to them at a particular moment. Very. Whatever the word is. I'm thinking too much in Mexican today. Sorry.
You just reminded me of my grandfather. He used to talk about how they would speak Mexican. The immigrants. He lived in Arizona.
Oh, wow.
You can't ever talk to them because they just speak Mexican.
Yeah, Mexican, the old ways.
Which in a way is not incorrect, right? Yeah. Because there is, of course, Mexican Spanish, which is different. But anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, no, I just, wow. So even I didn't know this until recently, and even you didn't know this, right? That there is a quota established basically by Teddy Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson's Congress, right?
Yeah.
In 1965 that totally punishes Mexicans but created this term and category illegal.
Yeah.
And created the Border Patrol and deportations. Deportations did not happen.
No, that's not true. You had Operation Wetback in the 1950s.
Well, yeah, okay, sorry. To enforce Operation Wetback, that's true for a time. But generally speaking...
But just in general, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't a permanent...
The police state that we have today with immigration.
Yeah, there was no sort of permanent law.
No, that's absolutely true.
Requiring that.
Mexicans would just come back and forth like nothing. The Bracero program was that first sort of attempt to regulate immigration from Mexico, but just saying like, hey, we want your cheap labor. And and this was an agreement with the Mexican government, too. It was the American government and the Mexican government. Let's send everyone over. To me, the best story about the Bracero program was actually in my book Taco USA. How the farmers, the reason burritos, the first sort of attempted mainstreaming of burritos were these farmers who thought, okay, let's feed Mexicans as cheaply as possible. Let's get flour tortillas. Mexicans like tortillas, right? Beans and rice. Mexicans love beans and rice. Let's give them these burritos. Well, these migrants, they mostly came from central Mexico. They despise this food. In their memoirs, they talk about like the worst food we ever ate were these burritos in the United States. And that to me was a revelation, just because people assume, oh yeah, Mexican food, all Mexicans love all sorts of Mexican food. So the farmers, they were trying to be cheap. At least they were saying, well, we're trying to give them the food that they want. But that's how clueless they were, that you're not checking in with these Mexicans about what kind of food they want.
So you're telling us that the burrito was created by gringo farmers. Right?
The burrito was first mainstreamed by gabacho farmers, yes.
Well, in a sense, created, right? Yeah. I mean, it became a thing.
Because burritos are actually a thing in northern Mexico. Okay. That's the thing. So same thing with flour tortillas. That's all northern Mexico, but most of the braceros were coming from central Mexico. Like my mom.
The poorer part.
Yeah, the poorer part. My mom, she never even had heard of a flour tortilla until she came to the United States.
Right.
That's because they just didn't exist in
Zacatecas. And now most Americans, when they think Mexican or when they hear Mexican, they think burrito.
Yeah.
That's the Mexican they know. That's the Mexican language they know.
The Chipotle, yeah, and it's all Chipotle's fault. God bless it, by invading college towns. They're the ones who really spread the gospel of the burrito across the United States to the point where it is today, where everyone thinks a burrito is this mission-style monstrosity, which, by the way, I love. I am equanimous in my love of burritos, so I appreciate the mission burrito as much as I do a carne asada burrito from San Diego or the California burrito with the French fries stuffed in. The best burritos, in my opinion, are actually from El Paso and Juarez, these tiny little things where on flour tortillas that are about the size of your palm, and then they have a bunch of stews there for the day. It's like 8 stews, and you just toss them in. Best burrito, burrito de weenie.
This is one of the things I love about you. You don't give a fuck about rules.
No.
Right? And well, I'm talking specifically about this thing you wrote recently about cultural appropriation
and
food and all this stuff, and about how Mexicans have ripped people off in various ways. And there's just all this borrowing and cross-cultural, loaning, borrowing, stealing, whatever it is, to create cultures that change all the time. So you don't fucking care.
No.
The burritos maybe were popularized by gringo farmers, right?
No, the biggest advocates or the biggest acolytes for Mexican food have always been Americans, always. In Mexico itself, who was a person who basically popularized regional Mexican cuisine? A British woman named Diana Kennedy. Like when in the 1960s, and she's a horrible lady, like just so presumptuous, just apparently a complete bitch in real life. But she's a pioneer because in the 1960s, the Mexican elite, they didn't give a fuck about Mexican food. They wanted continental cuisine, kind of like Americans here. It's all continental cuisine,
That's right.
French cuisine or whatever. So it was Kennedy who took it upon herself to try and start documenting all these regional styles of Mexican cooking across the United States, in Mexico, then made a book about it. She's the one who started popularizing this push towards regional Mexican cuisine. On the other hand, though, she's also the woman who basically created the epithet of Tex-Mex cuisine, because she said all of this is quote-unquote authentic Mexican food. The shit that Tejanos, who have been living in Texas for 200 years, that's not real Mexican food. That's a bastardized style of Mexican food. And she just would talk all sorts of shit. So on one hand, yes, she's good because of the documentation that she did. But on the other hand, once you start getting into these questions of authenticity, then I really can't respect you, because there is no such thing as authenticity.
Right.
Especially when it comes to food, my God. Especially when it comes to Mexican food.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I was going to say, it probably makes it easier to make that argument, given that Mexican food is the most popular food in America now.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no insecurity here.
No.
Right? You don't have to worry about anything. So I'm thinking about my mother, and I'm thinking about, so I grew up in Berkeley.
Yeah.
I was born in 1965, grew up in the 70s. That's when Chez Panisse came about, right? And
Yeah.
my mother just latched onto this thing, this new sort of gourmet revolution that really began in Berkeley.
Yeah. Alice
So-called
Waters.
gourmet, yeah, right. So, but my mother's Bible, like many people at this time, was Julia Child's, what is it called?
The Art of French Cooking.
The Art of French Cooking, right? Her cookbook, which popularized French food in America in the 50s, I guess, first, and then really took off in the 60s when my mom found it. And so in my family, it was always about French food. That was what fine food was.
Yeah.
And I still think it's my favorite in a sense. I mean, in a way, it's like, I don't know, whatever. But that was the only thing that mattered. It's kind of what you were talking about, right? This attempt, the American elite, to be elite, you had to eat French food.
Yeah.
That's what you would eat, right? That was the elite food. Well, and so my mother didn't know anything about Mexican food, even though we were living in California.
Yeah.
And she had lived in California since the 50s. And Julia Child didn't know anything about about anything other than French food for a long time, until Julia Child moved to Santa Barbara in her retirement. And she was told about this taqueria in Santa Barbara. Which one is it?
Super Rica.
Yeah, Super. Is that the one?
I think it's Super
No,
Rica.
it's
whatever it is. That's how much I care about it. It's not even a good taqueria.
But it's kind of a great story, right?
Yeah, it's a great story.
She gets told about these things called tacos, right? And she's like, "What? Oh, come on now! It's just meat on a tortilla. How good could it be?" And no, you got to go to this one place. Go to this one place. So she went there, and it changed her life. And Julia Child started talking about how wonderful Mexican food was, and she had this magical experience of eating tacos for the first time at this place. And so, of course, this is all coinciding. She's a little late to the game, but still, it's coinciding with this revolution in American cuisine, where French food no longer is considered to be like the thing to aspire to, right? And it's Mexican food has become dominant, at least. Maybe people don't think of it, although even this is changing, as the elite cuisine, but even that's changing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But nonetheless, it is the most popular food. So anyway, yeah, now my mother loves burritos too. This episode of Unregistered is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service that shops, plans, and delivers your favorite step-by-step recipes and pre-measured ingredients so you can just cook, eat, and enjoy. The convenience, selection, and flexibility of HelloFresh are pretty amazing. They offer a wide variety of chef-curated recipes that change every week and deliver the meal kits to your door on the specific days of the week that you choose. All the ingredients come pre-measured in handy labeled meal kits, so there's no confusion and you know exactly which ingredients go with which recipe. HelloFresh makes it so easy to cook delicious, balanced dinners for less than $10 a meal. The thing I hate the most about dinner is having to plan it every single night. With HelloFresh, there's no more time-consuming planning of meals, writing down those lists of ingredients that you need to get, and shopping for groceries. My girlfriend and I just made one of our favorite HelloFresh recipes, roasted pork tenderloin with lemony potatoes and zucchini. It's healthy, it tastes great, and it takes us only half an hour to prepare. For $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com and enter promo code UNREGISTERED30. That's promo code UNREGISTERED30.
Hey, I don't know too many. If I'm in Berkeley, I'm not eating Mexican food. I'm gonna go. What's there?
Well, it's everything, man.
Yeah,
everything's there.
No, but there's one dish. It was I think it was a Tibetan restaurant that I usually go to a lot, which I can't remember. I don't go to Berkeley that often.
Yeah, I think it's on Shattuck Avenue.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I forget the name of it, but yeah, I never went there. But yeah, so okay.
Mostly dumplings.
Yeah, you don't give a fuck about rules. Neither did your dad, apparently. At least he didn't care about American rules in 1969. Yeah. I was just gonna say, so if he had come just 5 years earlier, it would have been a lot easier. Mm-hmm. He could have just walked across.
Yeah. But then he wouldn't have all these stories.
Yeah.
Well, literally, my grandpa, I just put a penny in a slot machine. My dad is like, you should. Well, we tried to do that with Fox. I worked on a show called Border Town that was really good and just got canceled after one season. But telling those stories, like, and this is my big thing is like, you say I don't give a fuck about rules, which is absolutely true, but I also don't give a fuck about victimhood. And that's one of the things that my parents and my uncles especially just instilled in us. You are not a victim of anyone. Yeah, life sucks. Yeah, there's always going to be fuckers here and there, but that does not make you a victim of anything. Like, no te hagas. Like, don't make yourself into something that you're not, and just go out there, no fucking excuses. And that gets me in a lot of trouble with my friends on the left because they're like, well, no, this, and that. I'm like, look, is there systematic racism? There's always going to be racism. Is the government horrible? Absolutely. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to cry and weep and moan about that shit? Or are you going to fight back? Are you going to fight back in your own way? I've always been a fighter. Hard work, I'm absolutely will always be a hard worker because that's just in our system. But also you have to be a fighter. You think fucking Zapata and Villa would be crying victimhood? No, they fucking got their guns and started, like, today's the anniversary of the Mexican Revolution, November 20th. Yeah.
Yeah, did they cry victimhood? Meaning, did they ask for my help?
Yeah.
Right? Did they want me to lift them up? Did they want me? Did I determine their destiny?
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Your dad, as far as I understand it, never thought of himself as a victim. Started his business, his own business, and became successful enough that he could buy a house for your family when you were, in high school?
We ended up buying the house. No, not in high school. Fourth grade.
Fourth grade?
Yeah. We lived in a granny flat at first that was owned by another guy from El Cargadero, an older guy. And then my dad, he actually got injured as in the carpet cutting industry, like messed up his back. And then they trained him to be a truck driver. And then by then, all that money that he had saved over the years, his money and my mom's money, and they bought their house in 1989. I would have been. Was I in fourth grade? Yeah, because I had to change schools. I ended up going to Patrick Henry, which is right next to where my parents live to this day.
Yeah, so within 20 years, he went from crawling through a sewer with nothing to having his own business and buying a house in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so I'm guessing, I don't know, but you tell me, like if I were to call your dad an illegal, would he be offended?
No, he'd correct you. No soy ilegal, soy mojado. I'm a wetback. Because that's the terminology of his generation.
Exactly.
Somos mojados. Exactly. And this is a thing, like, we used to, popular culture used to lionize Los Mojados. I mean, there's songs like Los Tigres del Norte recorded a song that was a cover by the even better group Los Alegres de Teherán, but called Viva Los Mojados, like Long Live the Wetbacks. And it's a whole story. It's a great story. I can't remember all the lyrics, but the gist of it is at the end, it's like giving advice to, wetbacks coming into the United States and saying, like, all of you should marry a nice white girl. And then once you get your papers, divorce her. And then move on to the next one. But you had fun with it. That's the thing. You had fun with it. Or like
Source of pride.
source of
too.
pride, yeah.
Well, why? Because it means that you swam across a river to make your life better.
Yeah.
I mean,
You jump fences,
how
you
is
tricked
that-
the border patrol, you did everything and anything possible,
Right.
and that was a victory. That is a huge victory, to come into this country with nothing and fucking make something out of yourself and never cry once about it. And not only that, reminisce wistfully about those eras. And so the older Mexican songs, you have all sorts of ones. There's another one, Los Mandados by Vicente Fernandez. And if you don't know anything about Mexican music, you know this guy. He's a big guy, big hat, big mustache. That's Vicente Fernandez, legendary ranchera singer. But he sang a song called he took on the role of an illegal immigrant, just talks about all the different ways he came into this country, and then he got beat up by the border patrol. So I have to translate. So the immigration caught me about 300 times, let's say, but the beatings that they gave to me, I charged them to their countrymen. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna fuck me up, I'll sue you and I'll win, motherfucker. But he does it with such gusto, and I hear those songs, and then you start talking about, the I word. And look, if you like, my thing is, I'll call you what you want me to call you. If you don't want me to call you illegal and you want me to call you undocumented, I will. 100%, no questions asked. But come on, you got to have fun as well. Fucking own that shit. Own that shit.
well, here's the thing. I mean, if you think the law is unjust or wrong, then it's a good thing to be illegal, is it not?
I've never thought of it that way. That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, my book, Renegade History, that's what it's about. It's about people who did illegal things that we now all take for granted, these things that are part of respectable culture now, thank God, right? But they broke the law, literally, the law itself or, moral law.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they made the world better for us, just like your dad.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it should be, in my eyes, to be illegal is a good thing. Oh, yeah, you're a hero. You're a hero.
I once wrote...
Unless you're a murderer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not okay.
That's different. But no, that's a different type of law. No, I once wrote an op-ed piece for... It wasn't the LA Times. I think it was actually the Dallas Morning News. But somewhere. This is about a decade ago. I should find it. But I talked about how I was glad that my dad came here illegally, because it taught us, it taught us never take anything for granted. Don't make any excuses. And more importantly, fucking throw yourself out there. Like, 18 years old, I can't imagine, sneaking into a country as an adult, let alone as an 18-year-old with no money in his pocket. Just all he had was, my uncles were already there in L.A., mi tío Santos y mi tío... I think mi tío Jesus was up here at that point already. And so many people got upset on both the left and the right. How dare you say that you're proud that your dad came here illegally? I'm like, yeah, he is a hero. Any fucking person who comes into this country when the country does not want them, and is not a murderer or any sort of other criminal, but they are a hero. They are, I always love going to Oklahoma, and I say, hey, I love you Oklahomans, because you were the original illegal immigrants. You lionized illegal immigrants in your name, the Sooners. What is a Sooner? The Sooners were the people who came in before they had that big land rush. But the Oklahomans don't like to hear that. But I'm like, that's your history, not mine.
They broke a law that should have been broken.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would say to people. That's what I do say to people. Yeah. So, the work, man, God damn it, your father. I mean, when you think about immigrants generally, but especially illegal immigrants, right? Because their wages are even lower, right? The work, I can't even wrap my head around it, how much work they do and how hard the work is. Because I hate work. I'm against work. It's one of my things.
Hey, if you could rock it, good for you.
So, and that's what he's done, right? Since he crawled through that sewer pipe.
Yeah.
Worked really, really hard jobs just for forever. And then he would drink at night, right? Apparently.
It would drink it then some. He's been sober now for 35 years, though.
Oh, really?
So, Alcoholics Anonymous. Again, one of these great transformational stories. He was a total drunkard, would beat my mom, just drunk like crazy. There's a great picture of my dad and the mi tío Ezequiel, my mom's brother, and it was 1970s, so they have those humongous, not even mullets, like Mexican mullets is a whole other genre, but those big, like, what do they call them? The helmet haircuts from like the 1970s. You see it right now on that David Simon show on HBO, whatever. They're super fat. It's all alcohol fat, like just fat guys, just with the beers right next to me. The interesting thing though about that, so my dad's been sober for 35 years, and I love to drink. I will always drink, but I can't drink beer. I can't drink beer because it reminds me, because my dad would give me beer, like little tastes of beer here and there. And so it reminds me of that bad era in my family's life when he was a drunkard. But it's only the beer, the tequila, mezcal, and cachaça, and all that shit. I could drink it like a fish.
How old were you when he?
3 years old.
When he was sober? When he went sober?
Yeah, when he went sober.
Oh, so you really barely, you don't remember it really?
No, I mean, I remember my dad beating my mom. I remember my dad being drunk and all that. So, but again, give credit where credit's due. My dad completely transformed himself, sober for 35 years, got all his uncles or all his brothers to be sober, still goes to Alcoholics Anonymous every single, not every day, but like 2 or 3 times a week, and like helps out Mexican men with their sobriety.
Damn.
And look, if you can't control your alcohol, then you shouldn't be drinking. It's all about controlling yourself. And like me, I know that there's that alcoholic gene in me, but so I drink in moderation. In other words, one day I don't drink, the other day I get fucked up. One day I don't drink, the other day I get fucked up. But just at home and never drunk driving. Not a million years.
I don't think it's a gene.
Yeah.
I think it's learned behavior. I mean, I think the fact that you were 3 when he became sober, I think that's why.
Yeah.
I don't know you enough.
Sure. Psychological profile.
Seems like it's not, I mean, I think that's why you're not having problems with it. But yeah, I've been sober for 5 years.
Damn.
For whatever it's worth. But at least I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand like kind of on a certain level what he was going through, especially in terms of relationships. So he's beating your mom.
Yeah. I mean, that's just part of Mexican, not Mexican culture. Let me catch myself. That's part of rural fucking macho culture. Whether you're in Appalachia or in fucking the highlands of Mexico, that's just what you do. I mean, why do we call tank tops wife beaters? Because we associate them with a certain type of American male, the rural, fucking working class white guy.
Well, violence within families is the norm in most of the world and always has been. It's really just sort of the elites in Western Europe and the United States who made that forbidden.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, this is women to men and men to women.
Sure.
To children and all the. I mean, so it's a recent phenomenon and a very narrowly confined phenomenon. It's really in the West, what we call the West, where it's not okay to hit somebody. Okay, so wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it's quite something. So he built himself up, and then did you have siblings? You have siblings? How many?
Oldest of 4.
Right, oldest of 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't beat. Did he beat you?
No. That's a funny thing. My parents never hit us. In Mexican culture, you always have this. It's almost like a talisman, la chancla, the sandal, like this type of sandal, old school sandal, like with the tire tracks, that the mom would say, if you eres malcriado, like if you misbehave, I'm going to hit you with this sandal. So like you make fun of domestic abuse with kids, but my parents never hit us. They would yell at us and like, but that's about it. They would never hit us though.
Yeah. So
seems to be the rarity in Mexican culture. Like, now growing up, you talk to especially my guy friends and they, reminiscing. Like my dad would say, okay, what am I going to hit you with? Am I going to hit you with this fucking cinto piteado, those big WWE style belts with a buckle? Or am I going to hit you with this switch? Like, take your pick, take your beating.
Yeah. So you guys were never hit.
No.
Yeah. Except in that way, yeah. So you lived in what you describe as the barrio in Anaheim. Mm-hmm. So which neighborhood is that exactly?
If you want to go by gangs, what gang was there? Because Penguin City was a little bit further down there.
We're talking about the 80s?
The 80s, yeah.
Okay.
Penguin City was a little bit further down there. I don't know what the gang is, but I mean, the house, it was behind, it was a granny flat. So it was behind a house, behind also a lumber yard off of Philadelphia and Santa Ana Street. And the funny thing about that neighborhood, it's getting gentrified now.
Of course.
Like that, of course. Yeah. The lumber yard's probably going to get knocked down in the next couple of years. So the developer there wants to build like these work, live, lost for chefs, so people could go into these chefs' homes and like cook at their homes and all this other bullshit. I'm like, it was a great neighborhood. I mean, it was a barrio, but again, it was all people, all my cousins growing up around there, all friends, all people from El Cargadero and all that. They used to be down the street from a Kwikset factory, which is now, of course, luxury condos. Before it was a Kwikset factory, that used to be a bunch of orange groves where my grandpa, my dad's dad, was a bracero. And so he would actually pick in that exact orange grove. So I know it's weird how things work out.
There's the migration pattern.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah. Interesting. So, okay, you said cousins were around. That means aunts and uncles were around.
Yeah.
So the extended family's around immediately, right? And they're helping to raise you, in a sense?
Yes. Because what would happen, and I mean, of the many things I have problems with in American culture, one of the biggest one is how small the families are. Because,
Boom. Thank you. Keep talking. Thank you.
People say like, oh yeah, I have like 3 or 4 cousins. I'm like, wait, what? First cousins alone? On both sides of the family, I have like 200 first cousins. Like, this is first cousins, because from my mom's side, I have 12 living aunts and uncles. From my dad's side, there was like 9 living aunts and uncles. They all had their kids and all that. We were considered a small family at 4 kids. And so what happens when you have those humongous extended families? Well, your cousins are your best friends. Your babysitter's got to be like the stay-at-home mom. All my aunts worked. All of them, my mom was a tomato canner. Mi tia Meme was, she worked at Angel Stadium cleaning, like in the cleanup crew, like there. So not a concession worker, but a janitorial there. My aunt, just the older aunts never worked, but quote unquote never worked, but like one of them, that stay at home mom, like one of them was a seamstress, so she would make all the quinceañera dresses and wedding dresses for people. The other one was a cook. I mean, make amazing chorizo. The best part was always, they buy a pig, her with her knife, slits the pig's throat, hangs it up by herself. So this is a big ass fucking pig, lets all the blood drain into a bucket. This is mi tia Maria, and then just makes all this amazing food out of it. So, but you have this sense of community just with your cousins, and these are just your first cousins. Then you have your second cousins. Then you have the childhood friends of my parents. They also came here, so then we grew up with those kids and whatever. So you have, I think the important thing, and so even if you're poor, you still grew up with a very sheltered life in a way, because you're taken care of. There's always going to be someone making sure that you're not being too fucking much of a fuck up,
Yeah, so here's the problem with you Mexicans.
Okay.
You think that what you just described is a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good way to live.
Okay.
I mean, you've gotten it into your heads for whatever reason, something probably biological, something genetic, no doubt.
Yeah, families. Heaven forbid we want big families.
That having an extended family, a community, people helping each other, doing things for each other in immediate proximity is a bad thing, because we have the nuclear family here, Gustavo.
Sure.
So if you want to stick around, you have to change your ways. But most importantly, you have to internalize that idea and know that it is simply good and better to live in a nuclear family with a mom and a dad and 2 or 3 children. Right?
Yeah. Supposedly. That's why I hate Thanksgiving. I despise Thanksgiving, because it's an imposed sense of family on people. I'm like, and this is from growing. First of all, I hate turkey. I've always hated turkey. But even when I was small, I would always tell my mom, especially, I'm like, we're Mexicans. Why the fuck are we celebrating Thanksgiving? There's no point to it. We see our family all the fucking time, and now we're supposed to make this holiday out of it. Like, leave that to the Americans who never see each other. Then they have all these problems. I'm always just fascinated by how Thanksgiving is played out in popular culture. To me, as a supposed outsider, it seems to me the whole reason for Thanksgiving is so people could bitch each other out at the table.
You know where we went for Thanksgiving 2 years ago?
A Chinese restaurant.
Mexico.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And I decided after that trip, I was like, why? We should have been doing this every year forever, and I will always want to go to Mexico on Thanksgiving. Well, I want to go to Mexico all the time, but especially on Thanksgiving, kind of, it's a symbolic protest of this thing. The nuclear family, I can speak to this as both having been a child in one and a parent in one, is lonely, hard as hell, and causes tremendous, constant, grinding, existential anxiety because you are all alone on your little island.
Wow.
No one is supposed, of course, someone might help you in the extended family who lives in another city.
Yeah.
Right? But basically, you're expected, right? The morality is the problem. It's that we have internalized this idea that that's what we're supposed to do. So if we need help from someone else, that means we failed.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, but raising children in itself is really hard.
Yeah.
But to make all the money and raise the children enough so that they live well enough to be good Americans is a hell of a task. So you wonder why Americans are so stressed out.
Yeah.
And by that, including Mexican Americans who have assimilated into that particular part of the culture, right? A lot of them have. Man, I hate that thing. And I hate it. And so that's been one of the major criticisms and justifications for barring immigration, not just among Mexicans and Latin Americans, but
chain migration from the family.
Yeah, the Jews did the same thing. The Italians, all those bad immigrants in the past,
all us swarthy immigrants.
One of the main things that was said about them was that they bring the aunts and uncles and cousins and grandpa and grandma, and they all live together in a tenement in Lower East Side or whatever, and they help each other. Yeah. That's not a good way to go. Because the thing is, the nuclear family does in fact discipline the shit out of you. It's really hard to be an alcoholic. Yeah. In a nuclear family as the father. Right? It's really hard to make that money and raise the kids if you're drunk half the time or even some of the time. So it actually does create really good, orderly citizens.
Yeah, but that's why all of you are on OxyContin and all these pills.
So we drink. We just do it like when the kids...
You do it classily.
Yeah, we sip the scotch.
Mother's little helper.
Yeah, we sip the scotch starting at 5 o'clock, but we never drink enough so that we show it, and we drink harder as soon as the kids go to bed.
Yeah.
Which means also we have no relationship with our spouse.
Of course.
That declines too. The nuclear family, man, I'm telling you. It's the thing, I think the Puritan work ethic, not work as a means to an end, but the Puritan work ethic and the nuclear family ethic, boy, oh boy, that's what I want to do away with. So that's why, one of the many reasons I want as many immigrants as possible in this country.
Growing up with a bunch of people that are related to you, it's fun. Like, they're your best cousins. Some of them are your enemies. Like, it's just one big happy family. And then the best part is, like, there's a party every single fucking weekend. This Saturday, we're going to celebrate mi tío Santos' 70th birthday party in the City of Industry. We're going to have a big old brass band, tamborazo. We're going to have food. It's going to be it's going to be wonderful. And every single weekend, if there's not this, it's not a wedding, it's a baptism. It's just a party, or just simple carne asada Sunday. Hey, whatever. It's a funeral. It's this, and that. You would go from one place. The only thing I didn't like about all those parties growing up, and I talk about this in my book, is just like none of the girls wanted to dance with me. Because, when you're growing up and you grow up in that environment, so the women are taught you have to be with a macho guy. And like, here I am, scrawny, nerdy, whatever. And so, and as a man, you're expected to dance. You are expected to dance. And I trust me, I wanted to dance. I'm a terrible dancer, but I would ask these girls, and they're like, no. And that's the thing. Like, the women, they have all the authority. They have all the power. The feminist bullshit. Like, no, the gender dynamics is the woman's. If she doesn't want to dance with you, she won't dance with you. And if you try to force her, someone's going to fuck you up.
Yeah, it's a culture that both has machismo at the center of it and is matriarchal.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Simultaneously. Isn't that interesting? I don't think I've thought through that.
No, not yet.
Have you? I mean,
no.
What does that mean? Like, how do we
work
with that?
The men, it's the mother, la abuelita or la mama or whatever, she has all the ultimate moral authority in the family. You all go to her. You all love her. The dad is the fearsome hard-ass workers going out there and wait, at least historically. But then you come here to the United States, it's almost combined both of them, because my mom, she always worked. I mean, she always got a paycheck. One of the saddest days of her life was when she was laid off by the Teamsters, actually. She was a Teamster at the Hunt Wesson tomato factory in Fullerton, and then in 1997, they closed down the factory, and they moved it up to Central California to be closer to tomato fields. That was one of the saddest days of her life, because she's never had a full-time job ever since. This is 1997.
Wow.
A long ass time. But that said, she went to cosmetology school. She was going to take the test, but then the fucking state of California said, oh, you never graduated from high school, so you can't take the test to be a cosmetologist.
What?
Yep. Absolutely true.
To put makeup on people?
Yeah.
You have to have a high school diploma?
Yeah. And so she didn't find out until 2 years into it. And so she still does it on her own. She's a little bit older now. She doesn't do it as much as she used to.
Black market, underground.
Yeah, of course.
Love it.
Mexican.
That is a thing I want to do. I want to do like a whole video series or something about all the people, especially like Black women and Latina women, right? There's this massive underground industry of cosmetology, right? They give haircuts, they do hairdo, they do the whole thing, totally underground and illegal, untaxed, unregulated, in their houses or whatever. Right? I think how many women in this country as we speak are doing that, right? I mean, it's just huge, and no one talks about it. Talk about entrepreneurs, man.
Yeah. You hustle.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, so weird. It is weird, like machismo and the matriarchal things coexisting. It's very interesting.
Mexicans, we're a dualistic society. The Madonna whore,
right?
If it's not dualistic, it's Trinity, because the whole Catholic thing too. So,
so you didn't get danced with because you were a nerd.
Yep.
You had glasses at the age of what again?
Oh, geez.
Very young, right?
The last year I was cool was in second grade. And they had literally...
Can you be cool in second grade?
I was cool. People liked me. People followed me around and did all that. Then I got the glasses. This is what I tell especially elementary school kids nowadays. I'm like, because now nerds are accepted. Nerds, for the most part, glasses especially. If you wear glasses, you're not looked on as a freak. Well, when I was wearing glasses, only the or later in the 1980s, it was a mark of death. It was a complete mark of death. And so ever since then, that's what ultimately got me the chip on my shoulder, was being ostracized. Not for, like I tell people, I've never experienced race. I've never really experienced racism in my life for being Mexican. Yeah, there's been some incidents here and there. I got talked shit on more by Mexicans for not being Mexican enough.
Oh yeah.
But from all sides of the world, I would always get it for being a nerd. So that's what ultimately gave me the chip on my shoulder that allows me to be, that gives me sort of the fuel to be as outspoken as I am about things. Because I remember it's not cool. It's not cool for people to fucking mess with you just because you're wearing glasses. And then I ended up stopped giving a shit about everything in ninth grade, and that's sort of like my liberation from that part. But still, those scars, if you will. And again, I'm not a victim. No. This is actually something I always talk about when it comes to bullying. Like, yeah, you don't want to make a fucking kid's life miserable, but that fucking teaches you how to do much better things as an adult. You get that. Like, if I was not fucked with, I would not have been the person I am today.
So your nearsightedness explains why you are who you are.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, that's it. That's where it is.
That's not is that when you started reading?
And I started reading before glasses.
Yeah, it doesn't explain anything.
Maybe.
Except for why the girls wouldn't dance with you. But so you were a reader.
Yes.
From early on. Now, no one else in your family was, correct?
Not for my parents. My dad had a 4th grade education. My mom had a 9th grade education. My dad had a 4th grade education in Mexico. That's when he dropped out because he had to fucking go take care of cows for my grandpa.
Were they literate?
You know, my mom is. My dad knows how to read. They do know how to read, although obviously it's a little bit harder for my dad because, again, 4th grade education. But my sisters, no, the rest of my family likes to read, except very specifically. Like my brother, the Raiders fans, all about sports. But slowly but surely, really, when me becoming a reporter, because they wanted to read they wanted to read what I was writing about. So that got them more into like just exposure to the world at large through my articles.
Right, but that was after you had already started doing your thing. Yeah. So again, we can't explain this. I don't know. It's very odd. I mean, but you're not the first person I've met like this, right? Who comes out of a family that's completely non-intellectual.
I'm the black sheep of the family because I'm the one who decided to do something. Well, I guess I'm the one who decided to be more like my parents. In other words, just throw yourself out there. My family, they have city jobs. If they don't have a city job, then the 2 of them have city jobs. The other one is a school teacher. So they took the very middle class, quote unquote, safe way into American society. They're the ones who want to be part of American society. Me, I'm like, fuck everyone, fuck everything. I'm just going to do my thing one way or another.
Yeah, well, you just sort of pick and choose whatever you want.
At this point,
you like this part about America, you like this part about Mexico, you like, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you don't care about rules. It's like whatever pleases you, you will embrace, and whatever you don't like, you'll dump, right?
Yeah, like people back in the day would hate on Ask a Mexican, saying, "Oh, you're not. These are Mexicans. You're not a real Mexican. A Mexican's supposed to do A, B, C, D, and E." I'm like, who wrote that checklist? I want to know that checklist to teach me what's supposedly a real Mexican. There is no such thing as a real Mexican.
Oh, I haven't said this yet. You're a great writer. Also.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I mean, you've won awards. I mean, you are, anybody, just read your stuff. It's immediately clear that you're like a serious, really, really good writer. It's satirical. And to me, I guess if I were to categorize it, I hope this isn't an insult, but like, you're kind of a more satirical H.L. Mencken.
Yes. H.L. Mencken is one of my idols.
Good.
Yes. Okay. No, it is such. He was a brilliant writer. He was a curmudgeon. That was the most important thing. Now, of course, very few people remember who he is. If they read his writings, they'd call him a racist, this, and that. But he was a brilliant writer. I remember one column that he did. He argued that the South should have won the Civil War because he said, look, slavery was going to go away. The South, they had more civility. They had this, and that. And I can't remember the particulars of it, but I remember reading it and being enraged. I'm like, how dare you write this? But at the same time, I'm like, you motherfucker, you made a great argument, and I don't agree with it. And more importantly, you were funny, acerbic.
Yeah.
That's the thing with him.
And that's the thing with you.
Yeah.
You are irreverent and acerbic and funny. And the way I know that you're a great writer is that you pull me all the way through your piece.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, there's no work for me.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, I'm at the end of the piece. Right? That's a great writer.
Piece, yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. And I mean, whatever I read of yours,
just in general.
I just go right through it. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've read a bunch of your stuff, and that's my experience. It's a pleasure. There is no work involved. That's a great writer.
Yeah.
And also, well, it's even harder and more of a testament to how great your skill is that you're writing about serious, complicated stuff. I mean, you usually write about politics and culture. Sometimes you write about food too, but even then, you write about food in a very complicated way. It's not like, some standard restaurant review.
No.
So, but it just pulls the reader right through, all the way through. You know what I mean?
I try.
Yeah. So,
well, you can never assume that the reader is obligated to read you. Even if they buy your book, that doesn't mean they have to read you.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, this is what I would always tell my interns. It's like you have to fight for the reader with every paragraph, every sentence, every period, every accent mark, all the way through. Do not lose them at all. So every sentence, it has to have a flow, but you have to entertain people. You can't be boring. And that's the most important thing. You cannot be boring. That doesn't mean you have to be like shucking and jiving all the time, but like fucking make it worth the reader's while to read your fucking stuff.
You have to show them that this thing matters.
Yes.
It really matters. I'm passionate about it, and you have to make them feel that passion.
Yeah.
So here's another mystery. Why people are good writers. I can't explain that either. So I've been a college professor for 20-something years. And that's the one thing where I have just been basically a failure. I've never been able to really make my students better writers. Of course, I can help them with some rules of grammar or I can, sentence construction, the mechanical pieces, but to make them into a good writer like you, I can't take like a mediocre or average writer and make them into you.
Yeah.
I just never, I don't think that's possible. Have you with your interns?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? You can really turn them around?
I have a coaching tree like no other.
I don't believe you.
It's absolutely true.
Because now I'm jealous of you.
Some of the people who have written under me now work at The Atlantic, used to be at the Huffington Post. Now it's called Splinter, whatever the fuck Fusion turned itself into. Part of the Gawker or the former Gawker tribe and all that, now owned by Univision, of course. They work for the New York Times. They work for elite publications.
Well, wait a minute, though. I mean, they were already talented as writers, weren't they? When you got your hands on them?
No, not some of them. Oh, yeah. You start off raw.
Okay.
This is where I would say, you could teach anyone to be a good writer. You really can, or even a great writer.
Okay.
This is the one thing you can't teach them, though: hustle. You cannot teach hustle, and so that I would say is what makes, at least in my case, all the people who have worked under me, they had that hustle. I don't care what fucking there used to be a writer for OC Weekly. I'm not going to name him. We're cool now, but still, I'm not going to name him. But him already outed his gender. So he went to like one of these prestigious graduate schools for journalism, I have all these clippings, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. He didn't have the hustle. He barely lasted a year with us because he did not have that hustle. On the other hand, there's a great, used to be an intern, now he's just a freelancer for OC Weekly. His name's Frank Tristan. Frank was a guy who got beat up by the neo-Nazis at that MAGA march in Huntington Beach. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like he only turned 22 years old right now, and he has a fucking drive like no other. Right now, he's an okay writer, and I've told him this. Like, he's an okay writer. He's still learning. But when he came, he had nothing. All he had was this fucking drive to be the best and just to fucking raise hell. Desmadre, as we say in Spanish, like holy hell. Like jihad, if you want to call it that way.
Okay, but so if I saw a piece of writing from H.L. Mencken and I didn't know who had written it, there was no byline on it, I would immediately recognize, or pretty quickly recognize, that it's Mencken.
Yeah.
If I read Arellano without knowing that you wrote, I would know it's you.
Yeah, people say that.
Correct?
Yeah, people do say that. That's cool.
You have recognizable prose.
Yeah.
A style.
Yeah.
Is that true of the people you're talking about? The people you've mentored?
Probably one of the guys, Spencer Kornhaber. He works for The Atlantic. He's our pop music critic.
And he did not have that flavor before you
worked with him? He did not have that flavor that he had before OC Weekly. I'll say that much.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're the, what do you call it? We're the debutante ball for all these people.
Right.
We're the, we train them, we spit them out, and then off to the races.
I don't know. So I still think there's something.
Well, no, but I agree with you only in the sense that it has to be innate.
Yeah.
Like, but for me, it's the hustle, because you can
Sure.
teach great writing. You absolutely can. Like, you tell them what I do is like, okay, read all these great pieces, just think, how do you do this, and that? Don't copy them, don't plagiarize, but now move it in. And so what I would do, and you don't have the luxury of this just because you have to teach all these people, but I did. What I would do is like they turn in their story and I would line edit with them, like, get behind me, I'm sitting, and like every single line, this works, this doesn't work.
Oh, I've done that.
Like that.
Okay. Many, hundreds of times. Yeah. I mean, I don't work with them for more than a semester or two.
Sure.
Maybe that's the difference.
Exactly.
So here's what I can do. I can absolutely create a great Associated Press reporter.
Okay.
I could even create a great New York Times reporter, right? That's just mechanical.
Sure.
There's no style, there's no flavor, at least in the news sections,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it all looks the same, right? You can't
Ultimately,
you can't basically tell one writer from the next, for the most part, in the news sections.
Yeah.
I could do that. I can teach them that particular craft. That's like teaching carpentry, right?
Yeah.
But nah, it's like being a special writer who's recognizable.
Okay.
As a writer,
Yeah.
just as a writer.
Okay.
Apart from the content.
Those.
I don't know if I don't think it's innate. I don't think anything's really innate, and certainly not, writing ability.
Hustle's
I don't
innate.
think even you were born with it.
Uh-huh.
I think my guess is for some reason you started reading at an early age and started paying attention to what you were reading.
Absorbing everything.
But not just absorbing it, but paying attention to how it was written. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That's my guess.
What I would read the most My training was Sports Illustrated.
Me too.
Oh my God, especially in the
Loved
80s
it.
and 90s, Rick Riley, Jack McCallum,
Great
Leigh
writers.
Montville.
Awesome writers.
Amazing. And the stories they would do. Like I remember one, and I used this actually for one of a former writer of mine. She ended up winning an award because she was doing something about a handball player. And she doesn't care about sports at all. And then I said, no, you got to do this story. One of the best pieces in Sports Illustrated ever was about like the king of the handball player, the king of handball. This totally, do you remember the piece?
So that's right after I was a Sports Illustrated fan. I subscribed when I was a freshman in high school in 1980.
Okay.
So yeah, and that was the highlight of my week was when SI showed up in the mailbox, and I studied it. Totally. And it was great writing. It was totally great writing. Yeah. So I think we also have this in common. The thing I was going to ask you what you read when you were a kid, but what I read first, like seriously, on a regular basis, was the sporting green in the San Francisco Chronicle. Every single day, starting at about the age of, like 7 or 8, with the breakfast cereal. Instead of the back of the box, I'd read the sporting green. Only sports, never read anything else. But now I realized what I was doing. I was basically studying how they were doing this, how they put this together. And that's when I got the idea of being a writer.
I used to go, when I would walk to school, I would always steal the Orange County Register and the LA Times, get the sports section, then chuck the rest of the paper away. And especially I've always talked shit on the Register because it's a terrible paper, but the one thing I've never talked shit on would be their sports section because they had great writers. And the LA Times was even better. My God. Like Bill Dwyer, Plaschke. Yeah, Plaschke's a hack. But Alan Malamud, the late, great Alan Malamud, Notes on a Sports Card. He was like all these beloved writers that just amazing prose and stories and all that. And this is another problem I have with the left when they say, oh, yeah, sports is for, like sports is like religion. Like, I don't understand why people go this. I'm like, you know what? Go fucking get Ta-Nehisi Coates. Let's see if he could fill up a auditorium of 80,000 people paying a total probably $100 and some parking, concession, and all that. He can't do it. On the other hand, you get a fucking shitty ass team like not the 49ers right now, but like the Raiders, they pack it in all the fucking time because you can't talk, it's the problem that they have. It's an elitist assumption that the working class is stupid because they're spending all this money on this shit.
Oh yeah.
And that I just can't stand that. I'm a sports nerd to death.
So on sports, I am somewhat ambivalent. I completely agree with you.
You get it. No,
the elitism of the left about this stuff. And it's not just sports, it's pop culture generally, right? The left, the real serious left, hates American popular culture.
Of course.
They hate the choices that the working class makes all the time. I had a professor at Occidental, in fact, tell me once that the real problem with the working class in this country is that they like Disney too much. Something you can relate to being from Orange County.
Yeah.
And that I said, so what should they be watching? Oh, well, Shakespeare and my lectures, of course. I really mean, but on sports, so, it is an amazing thing if you think about it, right? I mean, American men, they probably, I'd say, a solid majority of American men are world-class experts on some sport.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
They know that thing.
Especially now with fantasy leagues. They know all the fucking stats with the advent of sabermetrics and all that bullshit, which I hate, but that's just the traditionalist in me.
So my utopia, I started doing fantasy. I did a fantasy league in baseball before there was such a thing in 1982. Before there was rotisserie and all that stuff.
I was about to say rotisserie.
Before rotisserie. Wow. But we just made it up on our own. I don't know how it happened, but anyway, we did. But so my utopia would be that it would be a world in which I am in 2 fantasy leagues all the time, and I have sex the rest of the time, and eat tacos all the other times.
That's a good life.
That's pretty much it, right? What else do you need? I mean, seriously, I would want a world in which there is no politics, actually.
Yeah.
In a sense, I would become obsolete. My career would become obsolete.
Sure.
That's a better life, I think. I love what I'm doing, but it's got some edges, a lot of edges to it that I don't like, and I think I would just be happier.
Yeah.
So that's where I want to be, and that's where a lot of men just choose to be most of the time, right? Now, having said that, God damn it, I sure wish they would just take a few minutes out of studying the batting averages of the NL West and look at the Immigration Act of 1965 instead. You know? I mean, I do think the politics of our country and our world would be better.
Of course they would.
If they took some of that energy and put it into studying the news section instead of like what you and I did when we were 10 and just so I don't know.
They're the richest of the poor, though.
I don't know.
You need that outlet. You need that alone time, if you will, for yourself to give you the drive for whatever you want to do.
Yeah, man.
Like
Work.
If the Dodgers won the World Series, oh my God, you would have seen Los Angeles transform. Like you would have had such a better environment and people talk shit on LA. I've never had a problem with LA. I love LA. I really do. But there would have been such communal happiness. And it's, I mean, from everyone from like these 55-year-old baby boomers who grew up idolizing Sandy Koufax, who fucking cholos right there in off in Florence and Normandy sporting their caps. Like it would have been something communal. I think that's the important thing about sports is that it brings that sense of community. At least two people,
totally,
especially in a society that does not want community to exist at all.
Yeah, when I lived in New York for a long time, and when I got there, that was when the Knicks just took off, became really big. This was like the Patrick Ewing era.
Yeah, Don Starks and
Charles
Oakley.
Oakley. Yeah, it was awesome. And and you really did feel this, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The whole city just felt like everybody was watching it, aware of it, talking about it. It was a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember like being in this big apartment building, right, and which was on an air shaft, so you could see into like 10 other apartments at the same time, right across the air shaft. And we were watching like a playoff game one year in our apartment, and and when the Knicks won at a last second buzzer beater shot, you could see all these people in all these other apartments like raise their arms and jump up out of their couches and yelling and screaming, and it was just, I totally get that. But just even if it's when I'm alone, I'm yelling at the TV.
Sure,
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just pleasure. I just love it. And I love it because there's none of the work, there's none of the stress, there's none of the anxiety, there's none of the responsibility when you're a spectator in particular.
Yeah.
Also as a player, it's like a different kind of responsibility you have that I just feel liberated when I'm either playing or watching. But yeah, the elitism of the left on this is really gross. I remember being told this thing by a leftist when I was about, 9 or 10. My parents' best friend was a Spartacist.
Okay.
Spartacist League, hardcore Trotskyists. And he remembered him saying that was like the problem, like that sport. Oh, no, I know what he said. He said, well, the thing about sports is it doesn't matter in the real world. Right? And so I was like, yeah, on one level, that's true. But I mean, neither does sex, neither does enjoying food, neither does going to see an Ingrid Bergman play, whatever, right? Something highfalutin.
Sure.
It's fiction, sure. We're not actually members of the team, even though we kind of feel like we are.
And the owners will fucking rip you off at every opportunity and rip off the public taxpayers just by getting those stadium deals. But at the same time, it's like people get something out of it. And who are you to tell them that they're stupid?
Yeah.
They're not.
They're Puritans, those leftists.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean, they don't like it when people are just doing things for pleasure.
Yeah. Well, that's what Mencken said.
Right. Yeah. That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay, so what did you? So you were reading the sports section. Did you read any books when you were like in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old?
No. When I was young, I would be sports and then Donald Duck comics, the old Uncle Scrooge comics. Actually, those are some great comics from 1950s. It was whatever was at the Anaheim Public Library, and so I would go. They had the big bound volumes of Donald Duck comics, and Charlie Brown, Garfield as well. So comics and then sports. Oh, very important. Mad Magazine. Mm-hmm.
Mad so did I. Me too. Totally. Yeah, well, in the 70s, I read the Mad. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. No, I was reading it in the 80s and 90s when it was still good. That was very important in like making me. Just again, a satirical approach, making fun of everything and anyone, and being funny. I mean, I remember reading some of the stuff, and I didn't get some of the references. Just, because it was just too adult or too contemporary at the time, or in some cases too historical. But the drawings were funny, and I could appreciate just sort of the anarchy that Bill Gaines was creating. Like, why the fuck are there blimps at every fucking panel here? Or you have the potted plant, I forget the potted plant's name, and all that. And then, why does he call his writers a usual gang of idiots? And Al Jaffe with the fold in and Spy versus Spy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I love that stuff, and I love just. And it's funny because even young, like I somehow found out that Gaines did not accept advertising in his magazine just because that's just was his decision, and I respected that. So the point when they finally started getting advertising, I canceled my subscription. I'm like, fuck this, that's not what Bill Gaines wanted to do. Like principled, I was principled to a fault even when I was young. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you were. Satirical and irreverent. Mad Magazine for sure. I think of it that way. So I can see that as an influence too.
Yeah.
What about Marvel? And all that.
I never really got into comic books. For whatever reason, I never got into comic books. Like, I like comic strips, the dailies, and I also like, The Far Side and, Bloom County, with Berkeley Breathed and all that shit. Like all the stuff, all the great shit from the 80s and 90s, Calvin and Hobbes, of course. But I just never got into comic books for whatever reason. I have a friend who's still my best friend, along with my cousins, our mutual best friend, so to speak. But he was all a comics geek. I mean, they were going to fucking Comic-Con when they were teenagers. Like way down. Now they hate it. They think it's too Hollywood and all that shit. And I just never had any interest in it. Like I remember because the only two comics I ever had was an Uncanny X-Men where Wolverine's crucified on an X. I never read it. I just never read it. My friend gave it to me, and then there was another one. I think. No. You know what? I lie. The one comic book I did read was a Fantastic Four because, again, the bound volumes. Like I didn't have the money to buy the comics at that point anyway, but they had a bound volume of the Fantastic Four. So I loved all, the Thing, and Doctor Doom was a fucking asshole, and then the Invisible Lady, the Rocket guy, Mr.
Plastic Man,
Mr. Fantastic was
Mr. Fantastic,
and all that. So I loved, Plastic Man's totally
my
different.
bad, all you Marvel geeks, sorry.
But that's it. Like I never read Batman, no Superman, no none of any other X-Men, DC, never got into Image Comics, never got into any of that shit for whatever reason.
Have you read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, the big one, Between the World and Me?
No. Is it worth it?
It occurred to me, because I did read Marvel in the 70s, like hardcore. I really watched it, studied it, really got it. And it occurred to me, I was looking back at Coates again just the other week, and I realized that book is Marvel. It's a comic book, his prose style, but also the narrative arc and the way he constructs the stories and just the way he sort of sees the world is basically within the Marvel universe.
Fascinating.
It's kind of a big meta critique I'm developing about Coates. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Sure.
You were a fuck up in high school, which is another reason I love you. And why? Like,
I didn't like it.
Because you weren't smart enough. Clearly.
I was too smart, apparently.
Of course.
I did not like teachers. They were nice teachers too, but I just did not like them. No, I'll tell you what I hated. I hated standardized testing. That's what turned me off to it. And like I would tell the teachers, why do I have to do this? Oh, because we need to get funding. I'm like, why do we need funding in the first place? So I would always fail these standardized tests, like A, all the way through. And I also like to talk. Oh God, how I love to talk.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing we have in common. You said that you got punished for talking back in class to the teachers, right?
No, the two incidents I remember the best was in 7th grade, there was a teacher, Mr. Montgomery, a Spanish teacher, and we would talk all the time, and I always get in trouble. Then in 8th grade, all of his talkers from his 7th grade, they all got in the same class. And so he was so infuriated with how much we talk. It was 5 of us, and he sat us right next to his table, daring us to talk. And of course, we ended up talking, so that went nowhere. But the other one was in 10th grade. I was of course, because I'm a nerd, they put me in all these honors classes. And that's the thing. I hated honors classes because I hated all these nerds around me. Self-serious nerds. Like, they couldn't have any fun. But in 10th grade, it was a teacher, Mrs. Patzel. And I remember this name always because it was like 2 weeks in. I was talking so much that she actually made me stand in the corner. Like, who the fuck does that to people nowadays? Make you stand in the corner. After that, I went to the counselor. I'm like, I don't want to be in honors anymore. Oh, but you're so smart. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't have the grades, obviously. Like, I want to be with normal people. So I ended up being in a class with all cholos. It was like the cholos and the stoners. Like, they put me basically in remedial English. But the teacher was great, Mrs. Laffler. Like, she, with her, we read the Epic of Gilgamesh. We read Bless Me Ultima. Like, really interesting, like, you think about it. Because I forget what they teach. Because in 12th grade, they teach you American literature unless you're in honors English, and then they'll put you to British literature because, of course,
that's
the Brits.
The best,
yeah, that's the best.
Just like
course.
French cooking is the best
God,
food,
I fucking hate. I hate all the classics. I always like Shakespeare, but I hated Thomas Hardy. I hated Tess of the Dubervilles. Fuck that book.
So boring.
Why the fuck are we reading
God.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying we got to read like everything by people of color, but Tess of the Dubervilles, I learned nothing.
I'm totally with you. Yeah, this whole thing on the canon, all these debates about the canon. God damn it, I'm sort of on neither side, right?
Yeah.
Just what you're saying. It's like, yeah, I don't want everyone to just read Toni Morrison over and over again, which is basically what happens, by the way,
oh, sure.
for a lot of undergraduates these days.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look back at these texts and let's reevaluate whether we really do need to read Aquinas.
Yeah.
I mean, try reading that shit and try making sense of it. And it's so hard and so difficult and so dry. I don't see the value in it. I agree with you. And then British literature, good God. Victorian literature?
That's the worst.
Kidding me?
It's the worst.
Why do we need to still assume that is the best?
That's something for the elites. Charles Dickens was great, though.
That's true. Sure.
Dickens was great. Oscar Wilde was fucking hilarious, motherfucker.
There you go.
And all that. But yeah, like the Tess of the Dubervilles and the Turn of the Screw, Henry James, all that shit. I just couldn't stand it. And I guess that was my problem. Was like I didn't like that we had to follow a regimented way. And I actually had a teacher, I talk about this in my book, Mrs. Spikerman. I also hated math with a passion. I respect people who know how to do math, but I just have never been able to get math. But she said, I know why you hate high school. I do. But that's why, once you get into college, you're going to love it because you will basically be able to create your career. You're going to be able to create sort of, your canon, your syllabus, so to speak. And it was true. It was absolutely true.
And you went to, because you had a 2.4 GPA, you went to
Orange Coast College.
Orange Coast College, OCC, which is a community college.
Yep. And now I'm in their Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. The greatest honor of my life. And I mean it 100%. Like, wow. I don't care what happens to me in the future, but being put into my community college's Hall of Fame, this was like 2 years ago, was like, to me, amazing. It's like, I credit sort of my not transformation, but like, me being able to get to the point where I'm at today to community college, because once I went to Orange Coast, then after that I got A's in everything but math. So I ended up graduating with like a 3.91 GPA. From there, I got all the scholarships that allowed me to go to Chapman University, a private university, tuition $25,000 a year. I got it all paid, all paid. No student loans for me. Fuck that shit. Then when I went to the same thing, straight A's except math there. Then I ended up going to UCLA for graduate school. And by that point, I had already soured on academia. But I went because on the advice of the editor at the time, the founder of OC Weekly, Will Swaim, where he said, look, they're giving you a stipend. They're paying you. They're not only paying for your college education, they're giving you money on top of that. At that time, I was just starting off as a reporter, but he's like, it's 2 years. 2 years will just go like that.
Make you smarter, more knowledgeable. Sure.
Well, what I got out of graduate school was learning how to read a shitload of dense text and then summing it up. Literally, I had one. This was for anthropology, and we would have to read 600 pages a week, and then we'd have to summarize it in one page. And that was great. And the classes at UCLA were good. I mean, there's great professors there at UCLA. But some of the shit, anthropology was just really dense.
But wait, you were in Latin American studies, right?
I was Latin American studies with an emphasis in history, sociology, and anthropology. So I was able to get just a shitload of classes, a little bit of history. They're all around the Latin American experience, of course, but it was great.
What was the politics of that department and UCLA at that time? This is the 90s?
No. At this point, it would have been, I was there 2001 to 2003. I didn't really know much about the politics. I do know that, like, one of my favorite professors, William Summerhill, he was self-admitted conservative. And he said, you might have a problem. This is academia, of course. It's like, look, you might have a problem with my politics. I don't care. And I don't care about your politics either. I'm here to teach you. And he was an amazing, amazing teacher. We still keep in touch every once in a while. But everyone else in Latin American studies, so it's going to be Chicano studies, so left, far, far, far left. Yep. But we never, I don't remember too much. I mean, this is 2001, so I'm sure it's completely different now. But you didn't really get too much of the politics, like, fuck the right or all this shit. Even like I had one professor, one of the godfathers of Chicano studies, Juan Gomez Quiñones. Like, he's a pretty polemical guy, but in the classes, he was all about just academia. I mean, probably his most political thing would be at the end of every class, and I can't remember the exact class, but it was a class that undergrads and grads could study. Like his very last class, he would just play a 1-hour video about Mexican song and dance. And his thing is like, look, we've been talking about all this shit for whatever. Now see it up on the screen. And more importantly, be proud. Like, if you're Mexican, be proud of being Mexican. This is our culture. If you're not Mexican, well, it's cool. But like, this is a great culture. Like, no matter what you hear outside in the real world, like, fucking value this shit. And that was it.
Yeah. I was thinking about the Chicano left.
Yeah.
Right. And so
the activists.
Here's my first experience with the Chicano left.
Okay.
Mr. Pena, my 5th grade teacher. Who sent me to the principal's office about 10 times that year because I would talk back in class and crack jokes just like you did. But,
sure.
And he wasn't, I don't remember him being sort of anti-white in doing this. I was truly a disruptive kid. But I'm pretty sure he was a Chicano leftist. This was like in the mid-'70s in Berkeley.
Yeah, you'd have to be.
So, they were around. But, in my world, and I've been around the left my whole life, and I've studied the left, the Chicano left has always been just a really small footnote to that. And if you're not from California especially, it's almost unknown.
Yeah.
But there's sort of 2 strains, am I right? Because you've written about this a lot.
Yes.
There's sort of the Chicano nationalist left, if you want to call it left, and then there's the just straight Chicano socialist left, which would be more, I mean, and Cesar Chavez kind of try to split the middle between those two, I think, right? Or try to hybridize them in some way. But he really I think he comes out of really more of a socialist, the socialist side. But anyway, there's this hysteria, which I didn't even know about until Trump, about Mecha and La Raza.
Oh, yeah, Mecha,
and
I was a Mechista, yeah.
And then there's, this idea, I didn't even know people were worried about this, that there's an actual attempt to take over.
Oh, Reconquista.
Yeah. Again, to come back and take it over again and create Aztlan, right?
Yeah.
That is what is the plan of the Mexican government, which, I mean, to some extent is not totally false because there is a deliberate attempt to place people here, sure. But that what they did was, of course, the Trump type people would identify these, the 10 or 12 actual Chicano nationalists who really do have that idea, right? Who didn't want to just send me to the principal's office, but they wanted to send me to
they wanted to send you to the
fields,
pyramid.
To the fields, so that I pick strawberries and not them, right? So anyway, I just thought it was, but of course it's just all a fantasy, paranoid fantasy. But there is that strain, and so Mecha is the student organization, right, at college or high schools, right?
High school and college,
and college, right? And it's the main, as you've said, like the main in most of those chapters of Mecha, it's the objective is just to get kids into college and get them through college.
Yeah. It's a support system. It's like, especially for a lot of first generation college students, if you don't know what the fuck's going on, you're going to surround yourself with people who come from your same background. So in Mecha, the Mecha is more of a political organization in the sense that you also, I mean, what's it politicizing? You have these Chicano Latino youth conferences, which is, hey kids, you want to know about college? We're going to organize it for you. And let's have classes on like racism and sexism within Mexicans. It's a lot of self-regulating of yourselves and trying to like deprogram people from supposed toxicities that exist or pathologies that exist in Mexican culture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's in a way, well, it's assimilationist. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You know what? I never thought of it that way, but it's absolutely true. It's no, because now because I've been to some of these high school conferences or whatnot, they'll have me as a speaker or whatever. And then you see the classes like, why, like, I'm making up titles, but it's basically why homophobia is wrong. Or like the new thing now, we're no longer Chicanos, we're Chicanx. We're no longer Latinos, we're Latinx.
Totally
assimilationist.
I mean, assimilation into the progressive wing of America, American culture. Oh my God. Yeah, Latinx, that's an American creation, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't come from Mexico.
No.
None of that stuff, right?
No.
That's so funny. I didn't know they were, I mean, what we call that SJW politics, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, which I hate because it's just imprecise.
But
that particular kind of identity politics, progressivism, feminism, all these American things, right? They're trying to assimilate these kids into that culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Which to me, it's
talk about white supremacy, right?
I guess so.
I mean, I'm sorry, you remember. I mean, but that's
no. I will always hail Mecha for what it did for me and for what it does for kids. I think it's important to get these kids into college and all that. But this is what I always tell people: my political awakening came from the left. But again, I'm the child of Mexican immigrants who said no excuses, don't be a victim. Right. So I'm kind of like in the middle of that, where I see where the left is coming from. But at the same time, it's like, come on, like the problem that I always had with the Chicano left is again just this whole victim mentality. And like we said earlier, like Zapata was no victim. Did he tell all these people, we're all victims? It's like, fuck no. It's like, no. What was his thing? It's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. In other words, don't be a fucking victim. Do something about it.
Yeah, he wasn't asking Wilson for foreign aid.
Yeah.
See, that's to me what is at the heart of the victimhood politics, right? Is you're basically telling me that I am in control of your destiny, and you're basically asking me to help you.
Yeah.
That's Ta-Nehisi.
Change your ways.
And that's a lot of the black left as well. Well, it's the left generally.
It's the left.
It's left. I mean, for whites on the left, they sort of pick their victims to uplift. But it's actually, here's the incredible, infuriating.
Do you see the show Shameless?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. So it was an episode recently. The black kid of William H. Macy comes back because now he's going to this elite academy, and then he tells all the brothers, he's like, "Yeah, some cracker told me that my life matters." And to me, I'm like, that is so fucking brilliant of a line. Just exhortating the left about this shit. It was brilliant. It was like a little 6-year-old kid.
It is actually the exact opposite of what it believes it is, right? It is assuming that whites and men and straights or whoever are superior and determine the world. They have agency and everyone else doesn't.
They have privilege.
And we are the parents. They are children. It is adopting the child's role, right? Like in a family.
Yeah.
or a child really can't help themselves. They really do need the parent to raise them up. I mean, that's really, and that's Ta-Nehisi Coates to a T.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah. We can't control our destiny. White supremacy controls everything. Yeah. So it's up to you.
Predetermined.
It's up to you, white people, to make my life better.
Yeah.
While he gets a MacArthur Genius Grant and goes to Paris and all the rest of it. But
I think he is sort of the flip side in a way to Richard Rodriguez, the writer, Richard Rodriguez. Yeah. I think they're both brilliant writers. Richard Rodriguez is an amazing writer. I think Ta-Nehisi, he's a really great writer too.
I agree.
But very fucked up mentalities that, that then people hail them. On the right, people hail Richard Rodriguez as a genius. And then on the left, people hail Ta-Nehisi Coates. But both of them have this, like Richard Rodriguez's thing is like Mexicans are self-made victims. Like you try to, like he makes Mexican culture to be far more about victimology than it really is. But that's sort of his own upbringing, being a gay Mexican in Sacramento in the 1950s. That's going to be a fucked up.
Indeed.
That's going to fuck with your mind a lot. But I just can't accept victimology. I can't. I like. People will talk to me about privilege, this, and that. And I say, look, I see where you're coming from, and there's some value. I'm always for analyzing shit, but like, no. Like, one time someone accused my mom of having white privilege because she's whiter than you. She's like light skin. I mean, fucking ivory skinned Mexican. And I'm like, how did my mom's white privilege help her out in the fields when she was 9 years old fucking cutting garlic in Gilroy? It didn't. So spare me this fucking shit. Like, spare me this shit. And more importantly, teaching kids about that, you guys are victims and it's the wasichu, the white man that's putting you down. What good does that do them? It does nothing good. Like, teach them the history. I'm all about teaching history. Like, yeah, there's been some fucked up shit, total fucked up shit. So what are you going to do about it? You fucking make something out of yourself.
What becomes the most important thing is what white people think about you.
Yeah. No, fuck white people.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the obsession.
Yeah.
Not among people like your parents.
No.
Not among the people who actually crawled through the pipes and crawled over the fences and worked the fields and all that. Not those people. I've never seen that among them. But it's the people who basically went to college. Those who went to college.
Yeah.
Am I right?
My cousins, we were talking about this off the air. My cousins are natural libertarians, and that's my main for rural Mexicans. The rural Mexicans, they are natural libertarians. They hate the government. They hate you telling them what to do. They're incredibly individualistic. They would have been natural Republicans, except the Republican Party threw that away a long ass time ago by telling my cousins, our uncles, because they came into this country illegally, they're a bunch of fucking wetbacks and they deserve to be deported. You're like, wait a minute, we're doing all the fucking things you tell us to do. Work hard. We, hate liberals, hate PC culture. Oh my God. And now we're the bad guys? Fuck you. So I'm going to vote Democrat just to spite you. Not because I like the Democratic Party, but because the Democrats aren't you. And even though the Democratic Party is a whole fucking mess unto itself. We're talking earlier with NAFTA and all this shit. But like, yeah, I mean, and it boggles my mind. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, everything boggles my mind these days, right? I mean, this is the weirdest time ever. I mean, in politics, it's completely like psychedelic.
Yeah,
it is just
psychedelic.
Surreal. It's a
That's
mushroom
a great
trip,
way,
right? I mean, everything that was up is now down and sideways and back. I mean, Trump is just part of it. I mean, the whole universe of politics, right, is just utterly different than anything I've experienced before. All right, so let's see. What do we want to do now? I have so many things to talk to you about, but so you're an intellectual in the barrio. We covered that, I guess. And you were teased for that. And that didn't match machismo. And so the girls didn't dance with you. Fuck up in high school, but you made your way through. You found your path in college, which is exactly the same thing with me. Basically, here's the thing. When we got to college, right, there were no fences.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and no rules and no regulations also. And we could just find our way through it on our own. And that's when things become interesting. Until then, it was Charlie Brown's The Grown-Ups for me. Let's see. In terms of politics, so assimilation. All right. So one of your big arguments that you make is that assimilationism is just, first of all, it's just happening. It happens. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So the argument on the Trump side of this, and you had this great, fantastic debate with Tom Tancredo about 7 years ago, the arch immigration restrictionist Republican, or he was a Republican at the time, but and that his big argument and the big argument on that side is that these Latino immigrants are not assimilating.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's true, okay, I suppose they have an argument. I still don't want to restrict immigration because it doesn't in itself threaten me. Yes, I will be, I guess, living in a different culture at some point, right? But you're saying that it's not true, like empirically. Now, I don't know. How do you measure this? I was actually looking this up. I mean, there's all these studies and polls, and how the hell do you measure assimilation?
Language.
So there's the obvious one, which
Pew
is
Hispanic
do people
Center.
speak English? And by the way, your parents still speak Spanish?
Oh yeah, they speak Spanish 95% of their lives.
Right.
They are fluent in English. They could talk to
they are?
anyone in English. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
So they can code switch.
Oh yeah, easily. But like they're only going to speak English if they absolutely have to. Like I never talk to them in English. It's always Spanish. With none of our siblings, with no one. They're literally going to speak English to their boss, to the doctor. That's it. Everything else is Spanish.
I mean, if they can speak English, then I don't see any issue at all.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so then how do you measure it? How do you prove? What's your evidence that Latino immigrants are assimilating?
Well, so this is what I say: the immigrants themselves, some assimilate, some don't. Just like every other immigrant group in this country, that's why you'll have like these fucking Slovaks in Pennsylvania back in the 1920s who never spoke English. They just didn't grow up. So, and some people did, some people don't. It's the kids that are. And how do you go? Go to the playground. Go see what language are they speaking. They're all speaking English. Go see what who are their superheroes. It's not fucking El Chavo del Ocho or all these Mexican things. Oh, best example. Who are they dressed up as? It's Halloween. This year, what was it? Minions, Wonder Woman, fucking Paw Patrol, the little kids, the super little kids. They're all assimilating into Mexican culture. And this is just as kids.
American.
Yeah, American culture.
Yeah.
They're assimilating into American culture. Then you get into high school. If you're born, even if you weren't born in this country and you came here as a kid, all these dreamers, so-called dreamers, all those dreamers are speaking English.
Oh, yeah.
All of them. And some of them came as teenagers.
Also, they are all, because they're dreamers, in college or the military.
Exactly.
So, that's
pretty assimilation right
I'd say
there.
so, yeah.
Exactly. So, and I mean, you can go with the Pew Hispanic Center that says second generation. They'll all show you they overwhelmingly speak English as their first language, and these are the kids of immigrants. Yeah. It happens all the time, and to me, it's just funny to see these people say that Mexicans don't assimilate. I tell them, do you even know Mexicans, or are you just watching shit from Fox News? That's all you're doing. You're just watching what the media talks about Mexicans, and even not just Fox News. That's an easy target, but even the mainstream media. And these studies have been shown again and again and again that when Mexican anything do get on television, it's always about crime or immigration. Nothing else. Nothing else. All the shows in Hollywood, they're all narco shows. Everyone wants to do their narco show. Let's make The Departed, but make it Mexican in Chicago now. Let's do something about El Chapo. Let's do something about fucking the guy from Sons of Anarchy, Jax from Sons of Anarchy. He was supposed to play a narco called El Barbie because, that El Barbie is light-skinned. And, of course, that raised this whole thing. But everyone wants to do narco shit. Oh, shit. No one ever wants to do...
Oh, God, you just made me so depressed. Because now I realize that Hollywood is doing with the drug war what it's done with the military, right? That Hollywood needs the drug war.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah.
So there's this incentive for them to make that hot and cool and sexy.
Oh, yeah.
So we're never going to legalize drugs. Okay.
No.
Great. So when I would hear these things, from these conservatives or whatever they are, Republicans of the Trump variety, about these immigrants who are not assimilating, I would think, I grew up in California, okay? And then I lived in New York City. I've only lived in totally immigrant towns, right? And much of my life around all kinds of Mexicans, just lots and lots of Mexicans, of course. Even if you're a wealthy person who lives in Beverly Hills, you're going to be around Mexicans a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And observing them. And I can't think of a second generation or third generation Mexican American who doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, does that even exist? Is there such a thing? I mean,
I should have done when I had my Ask a Mexican column, I should have done a contest. Someone show me a second generation Mexican American in this day and age who doesn't speak English. It would have been possible back in the days. I'm talking about early 1900s in fucking towns in New Mexico. Sure. But even now, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah, does that person exist? I mean, really, I don't know. I've never met one.
Let's put out a bounty on this person.
I've never met one, heard one. I've never seen one on Fox News.
Yeah.
Go show me one of these guys. You seem to think they exist.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so this is, I was gonna come at you about I was going to come at you about calling Trump a racist and Trumpists a racist on this stuff. But in your debate with Tancredo, actually, I think I changed my mind, which is that I think your argument with him was you didn't quite come out and say this, but I think you were suggesting this pretty strongly, right? That there's at least some kind of racism inside that critique, right? Mm-hmm. To assume that, or to believe even, that Latino immigrants are not assimilating, but all the other immigrants have.
Exactly.
I don't see any other way. First of all, it's just empirically false. But to then hold on to that belief absent empirical evidence also, I don't see any other way to explain that belief except that there has to be some racist element in there, right?
Or ignorance, just, bigotry, whatever you want to call it, and to specifically point out Mexicans. Anytime you start hailing other model minorities, that's inherently racist because you're saying those minorities are doing it the right way while these other minorities aren't. And their explanations, because those people supposedly care and the other ones don't. That's just bigotry, just flat out bigotry right there.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with Jesus Christ, Mexican immigrants. Holy shit! Yeah. I mean, okay, I'll give you the extended family thing. Although even there, second and third generation, right? They tend to, unfortunately, gravitate toward the nuclear family, right? Yeah. As a model.
Oh God, you want a great example of assimilation? Jessica Alba is like my third cousin once removed.
Oh my God!
Exactly. We share the same great grandfather. I know. I only found this out a couple of years ago. Her side of the family from all of that, they came earlier. Like she has a cousin who's a professor, Matt Garcia, really good professor at Arizona State. He's written some great books about citrus workers in the inland and in Pomona, the Pomona area or whatnot. So they're not the ones with huge extended families. As like her dad was a fucking Air Force pilot. That's fucking assimilation right now. We come from the same fucking family, great grandparents.
I didn't even know Jessica Alba was Mexican.
Yeah,
she doesn't read as Mexican at all, right? No. I mean, there's nothing about right. I wouldn't have no idea.
Yeah, no, her dad was. I think her dad. Well, her dad obviously married a white woman, but I think her dad's parents were Mexican and white as well. So I think it's like, but that's what happens. Like you start assimilating almost immediately. You fucking have this is weird. So she's actually my second cousin. She lives in New York. She ended up marrying my childhood friend who's a Chinese American. And so you think, how the fuck does this generation already fucking marrying Chinese kids, like, the kids of Chinese immigrants. And so their kids are going to be half Chinese, half, Mexican. Another woman, she's probably, and anyone from El Carretero is going to be related to each other. So I haven't established how we're related, but she's a pretty prominent Chicana blogger. She ended up marrying a son of Jamaican immigrants. Mm-hmm. Now she works in Cornell. So it's like, and her parents were immigrants. This is just how it happens. Yeah. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I've been noticing, I think that we have numbers. I know we have numbers on this. I just don't know what they are. But like the number of multi-quote ethnic or multi-quote racial people, right? Yeah. Multi, not two, but like 3, 4, 5, right? So Chinese, Mexican, Czechoslovakian, whatever you name it. A lot of my students have been that way too.
Oh, wow.
And especially like in the big cities, kids growing up in big cities. Yeah. People from places like Berkeley, especially. Berkeley, man, it's just truly like some test tube. They just threw everybody in there and out come all this new species almost of people with multiple ethnicities, right? It's a fascinating thing. But what's interesting is that those people, right, almost always identify. They have a choice of like 5 or 6 ethnicities. They almost always identify as what?
White.
No. No. They
multiracial.
The lowest, whatever. I mean, lowest historically. Mm-hmm. Of the races or ethnicities. So,
really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, really? You don't know this?
No, I don't know this.
Or am I making this up?
No, I'm not much of a demographer.
No, I mean, just about being around and seeing people like this. I mean, people who are 1/16 African, and, whatever. It's all bullshit. But, if they can sort of show that there's some black person in their family, they identify as black.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Uh-huh. They don't have to.
No.
I know America identifies them as such, but these are people who know that it's a social construct.
Sure, it's what the one drop rule.
But they want to be that. They want to actually be historically what was lowest.
Sure.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So in other words, I think victimhood has its benefits.
Well, if you could get those benefits, if you could prove that you're 1/16 fucking Indian and get all that tribal casino money, of course you're going to do it. Even if you don't live as a quote unquote Indian anymore.
But I mean, don't you think that's maybe it's not as true for Latinos. Maybe that's different for Latinos, but for blacks, it's definitely true. Mm-hmm. Right? You've seen this, right?
Yeah,
people want to be black.
Sure.
Well, like Obama, he basically chose to be black, right?
Yeah.
Very deliberately.
But people would have seen him as black regardless. They would not have seen him as a white man or even as a multiracial.
Right, but I mean, but I've seen this as a desire.
Sure.
Like people, like kids who were raised by white family, they were adopted.
Yeah.
And they're like, very, very light skin, but clearly there was some black person
Sure,
way back there in their
sure.
family, they almost always identify as black.
Huh.
They attach themselves, they gravitate toward that.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, 50, 60, 70 years ago,
They
no,
pass. Yeah,
they
try to
would do
pass,
the opposite.
Yeah.
There's been a complete turnaround on this, a sea change.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true for Latinos, though, because actually just like Jessica Alba identify as Mexican. Do you know
Recently, yes, she has.
Okay.
I think for her because it became convenient for her, and she's able. Well, now she's a billionaire now because with nothing to do with Hollywood, it's her company of like eco-friendly products, the
damn.
Humble some shit or other.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, she's a total entrepreneur. Like good for her for being able to do that. Sometimes I put on Twitter, hey, cuz like I got a screenplay for you. Come on. She's never respond. She doesn't know who I am, but her aunt does know who I am, and because she knows my mom, because they're closer together there. But no, I mean you have this is all on the politics side because a lot of people they'll say I'm not. The debate that goes on historically in California was that I'm not Mexican, I'm Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
That's where you.
That's the assimilationist move.
Yeah, that's the assimilationist
Right.
move. I'm Spanish, and besides, because to be Spanish is good, and Spanish fantasy heritage that you have here in California, and to be Mexican is to be dirty. But no, especially the more conservatives, they're not. Well, I think it's on a case by case basis though. Like if you could pass as white, you're going to have the light skin. But if you have a swarthy skin, you're never going to be able to get away with being white.
Well, so I'm thinking about you. Like you very clearly, I mean, your column, your book is called Ask a Mexican.
Yeah.
And it's the author, the character is,
Sure.
is Mexican.
The
That's the
Mexican,
name.
yeah.
The Mexican, right? I mean, and obviously, you've written extensively about Mexican food. You're obviously, there's this deliberate, I think, identification, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go there, but you
Oh,
did.
no.
You chose it,
Yeah,
right?
I chose it.
Although you chose it in a very particular Gustavo way,
Yeah.
right? It's not a generic way. So, I mean, like, you're obviously not attracted to the victim status that comes with that, right?
No.
You're not trying to get affirmative action from
No.
anybody, or even affirmative action sort of psychologically or culturally, right? Oh God, we need to take care of poor Gustavo,
No.
And don't ever argue with him because he's always right,
Yeah.
Like children,
Exactly, yeah.
which is what goes on in college campuses, by the way.
Of course.
Blacks and Latinos, especially those who are, the first generation in college, it's like, oh, don't ever contradict them in class.
That's
This
preposterous.
It's amazing. It's so disgusting.
They actually told you that?
No, but you see it all over the place.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Don't contradict. I'm like, fuck,
so
no, I won't.
disgusting. And so I am actually, if anything, harder, like on my Black and Latino students in class. I mean, I don't berate them, but like I treat them like intellectuals.
Yeah. Well, as an adult, yeah,
Grown up intellectuals.
Heaven forbid you treat someone with the assumption that they can withhold their own in an argument. No, you're supposed to baby these people. Like this whole, the whole thing with Milo. I was never able to write this story just because I ended up losing my job. But like he was recently at Cal State Fullerton, and of course everyone's like, oh. They asked me to sign a petition saying not allow Milo to speak. I'm like, fuck no, let him speak. Let him absolutely speak. More importantly, though, challenge him to a debate. Because my story was last year I was invited to be on a panel. It was me, Milo, and then two reporters.
Oh my God.
Yeah, one from the LA Times, one from like the Torrance Daily Breeze or whatever.
That would have been amazing.
So what ended up happening though was I think those two reporters found out who Milo was, and then they dropped out. So then it was going to be a debate between Milo and myself.
Oh my God.
And I'm driving to Long Beach City College, and I didn't really promote it. I think I might have, but people were like, how can you fucking debate Milo? I'm like, are you kidding me? First of all, for me, it's going to be fun. Just debate someone that I don't hate him or anything like that, but I have nothing with him. Like, I think his arguments are stupid or whatever, but like, have fun with that. That's going to be great. So I go and literally I park and I'm walking to the room where it's going to be. And I get a phone call, Milo canceled. I'm like,
scared.
Yeah, no, that's literally what it was. He was scared. The excuse that he gave was that day there was a professor was killed at UCLA. This is absolutely true. A professor was killed at UCLA, I think by one of his students or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Right. I can't remember the exact case.
Yes.
So that he said that his handlers said, oh, it's going to be too dangerous for you.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, give me a fucking break, because that didn't stop him the next day showing up at UCI before an adoring audience. Mm-hmm. And he was perfectly fine there. But to me, the most disappointing thing, I show up, there's protesters outside. No one knows who I am, of course. I just walk in. Protesters outside. Everyone files in. Everyone's all angry. Then they announce, oh, yeah, Milo's not going to be here. 7/8 of the fucking room leaves. They don't want to be there with me. They don't give a fuck about me. And I'm like, motherfuckers. The only people who stayed were whatever the club was, I forget the name, but the people who invited Milo. So all these, libertarians, conservatives, Trump supporters, all of that. And we had a great time. So basically I'm like by myself. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll just debate myself about politics in California. I can't remember, like the video's out there. The one question I remember was some guy just wanted me to excoriate the public unions. Like he's like, would you agree that public unions are the biggest problem that California faces? I'm like, no, I have my problem with the unions, but you guys are making them more. You guys on the right are making them more into a boogeyman than what they actually are. But they spend all this money. I'm like, sorry, like I don't agree with you. And like he just walked off in a huff. But afterwards, it was great with the students. We're just talking and like, some of them were saying like, yeah, we don't agree with what you said, but you're funny. And like, it was great. I'm like, you know what? You guys are better off than all these leftists because these leftists, they just wanted to be angry. They actually did not want to hear anything. And for Milo, it's like, you don't want a debate. You want, he debated some person one time. The other person he didn't show up on was on the Tom Leykis show. Tom Leykis invited him, this is about 2 years ago, invited him right when he was blowing up, be on the air, let's just talk. He canceled, never gave an explanation. Ever. Because he knows that Tom would have fucking challenged him, even though they probably agree with a lot of the same shit, like feminism is cancer and all that stuff. That's what Tom has said all the time as well. But it disappoints me with college students being so upset about just Milo showing up, period. It's like, let him fucking talk. Challenge him. Oh, but you're enabling him. Yeah, and what? Like, fucking destroy his arguments. If you don't like what he's saying, then counteract him. Don't shut him down. Let the fucking idiot speak. Let him speak. Better yet, debate him because then you're going to show what an idiot he is that he won't debate you.
Right, yeah.
That's why I did Tancredo, and people were mad at me about Tancredo. I'm like, I don't care. I'll debate anyone and everyone.
Yeah, it was just pure entertainment watching that debate you had with Tancredo.
Yeah.
And in large part because you both were very principled, right? You both took it seriously, but you especially had, there was a lightheartedness about it as well. Without making fun of him, you did a little bit of that.
Of course.
But not much. I mean, especially that was 2010 and he was saying shit that was basically threatening your existence in a way. So I kind of get that. But nonetheless, yeah, you had this great debating style. So the wheels are turning right now. Like I'm thinking we might
tour.
Well, yeah, I'm going to think about this. We should maybe think about putting something together because we can.
Yeah, no.
We can totally do that.
And I think it's important. Like, obviously I don't agree with like Trump supporters or anything like that, but I'll talk to them. Yeah. A very good friend of mine, he's like, God, he's like the heir to a fucking orange juice fortune. The best orange juice on the planet, by the way. It's Pericone juice. Like, if you ever go to a restaurant and you think, damn, this orange juice is really good, it's probably going to be Pericone juice. Pericone, yeah. Italian, yeah. Fucking Dagos, fucking within 3 generations are fucking multimillionaires with 3 houses right next to each other on Sunset Beach. So, guys, total Trump supporter, total fucking hardcore. He's like, you read it. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he'll post the guy, my friend, the craziest fucking conspiracies about Hillary and all that. But we're friends, and we debate. But you know what? We're friends because he's a good guy. He's such good friends that both of his children were my fucking interns at the OC Weekly. And he said like, yeah, you know what? Fuck OC Weekly. You guys are a bunch of leftists or whatever. But I know you fucking care about shit and you're going to fucking get my kids to that next level. That's what we happen. And I'll tell, like, if I describe this friend to my leftist friends, they'll be aghast. Like, what I actually fucking disgusted me the most about this election cycle was, and I'm sure you saw these, if you're a Trump supporter, defriend me. Then you're not fucking friends. And what does that say about you as a person that you're gonna fucking ostracize someone for their political beliefs? Yes, Trump is bad, in my opinion. Yes, Trump is this, and that. But that's not gonna stop me from having friendships with people. My editor used to tell me, intelligent minds can disagree. And I absolutely agree. Maybe even with dumb people, you could disagree with them, but fucking talk it out. Have fun.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a Chicano nationalist
okay.
with you. So I mean, I hate the anti-Trump hysteria as much as anyone, or more than anyone, pretty much. With this one exception, actually, it was the immigrants that I actually was worried about. Like, and I did actually understand. I was living in downtown LA at the time of the election. And like the day after, there was that massive, it looked like maybe 1 million people like filling downtown LA, walking right by my apartment building. And I actually did understand that. I think some of it was hysterical. Yeah. But sure, I mean, well, now, I also, like, I know that he's simply enforcing Democratic Party laws and all that stuff. But nonetheless, I mean, tossing those people out that's a serious thing on the table now. And that's real, and it's worth, and that means your very existence and your life, the life as you have it, is really truly threatened. It's not just insult, right?
No.
He was actually threatening to send the cops to your house and take you
yeah.
back to this place you haven't lived in or never lived in before. That's a real deal. So if someone were to, if someone were to endorse a candidate strongly who was promising to deport everyone named Russell in the United States, I don't know if I would be friends with them. Right? I mean,
but I think with some people voted for Trump, not even with the immigration thing. Like, so this friend of mine, he's all for immigration. He's like, I'm voting for Trump just for business. That was his thing, business. And I would tell him, like, well, how can you support someone who basically wants to get rid of people like myself? He's like, oh, no, he'll never make that happen, which, of course, well, here we are. I don't know. We're a year in. I really do believe with Trump, I called him a racist, and I think he said racist things, but really in seeing him, he's a convenenciero. If he thinks there's an advantage for him to pass amnesty or not deport people, he will do it. He surrounded himself with arch racists like Bannon and all the like fucking Stephen Miller. I really do think Stephen Miller, the whole reason he hates Mexicans is because a girl or a guy rejected him romantically when he was in junior high. No,
really? You mean a Latina?
A Latina. Mexican.
Does that happen? That happened?
No, that's my theory. That's my theory. Because I know that
Monica?
type. I know that. Well, because they say it, that Univision did a story about how he had Mexican friends growing up.
Oh, really?
And then there was a flip.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, that's absolutely true. I'm like, I know that type. I know that type of person.
Yeah, because of Mr. Pena, I could have gone that same way. I could have been Trump's man, his advisor, because of Mr. Pena. So yeah, let's wrap up. I mean, so you're in a very important dynamic moment in your life, right?
Yeah.
A turning point here. You're now gone. I mean, this was your identity.
This was my dream job.
I'm not talking about being a Mexican here.
No.
OC Weekly. I mean, that's who you were
Yeah.
for a long time. How long? 18?
Well, I was on staff for 13 years. I was writing for them for 15 years, and I was editor-in-chief. November would have been 6 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's your whole career, basically.
Born and raised in Orange County. I never wanted any other job. I had many offers over the years to jump ship. I refused them all because I think it was important for me to try to change the Orange County narrative. And I know I succeeded, and I left. I thought I was going to be at that job for the rest of my life, and here I am. Yeah,
and so that model, the Alt Weekly model, Village Voice, OC Weekly, LA Weekly, all those Bay Guardian that I love so much and you love so much.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this until I read your piece about it that you just published. About how those guys, as cool as they were in the time, were stuck in the time, right, and didn't adapt to the new media,
Nope.
right? So, and that's you're saying is why they're folding, and why you no longer have a job there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I just think that you're just made for new media, though.
Yeah.
Like you're just great.
People said that. People have said I'm the perfect freelancer. That
Totally.
I just fucking pick things left and right. And you know what? I do. I'm also a company guy. I like to belong to.
I don't like that so much.
Well, you know what? I like to. And all my, I'll say it like this. I like to belong to something, like to a cause, so to speak. And for me, the cause was OC Weekly. Of course, if I were to join a company, they'd have to let me do the same shit I did at OC Weekly. And that's the thing. I have the luxury of saying, well, I don't have to take your job. I've gotten a lot of offers, good offers too. But I'm like, no, it's not going to happen because it's not under my terms.
But why don't you do what your dad and mom did, which was create their own cause?
Yeah, no, seriously.
Right.
You saying that really puts it into perspective. Like, and you know what? Maybe because I'm too American, I'm too fearful of doing something on my own. But then, like, why the fuck do I want to be American? Why don't I just be Mexican?
Look at those people.
Look at those
right
people.
there who you know so well.
Yeah.
You know their stories so well. You understand it so well. Apply it to yourself. But on top of that, man, you're not crawling through a pipe full of shit and piss.
Nope.
You're Gustavo Arellano.
First world problems.
You're the man. I mean, you are. You're a huge deal. People who don't live in Southern California don't know this probably, but like you're a big deal in Southern California. I mean, pretty much everyone in my world knows your name, knows your work.
One way or another.
For sure. And even nationally, you have a name too. You've done a lot of national stuff. So it's just obvious, man. And I cannot wait for the Gustavo Arellano media empire. I really can't. It's so exciting.
Gustavo Arellano's Weekly.
I hope so.
I think that's going to be it.
Whatever it is, I'm there. I'm a customer. So
appreciate it, man.
Thanks for doing this.
Gracias.
And good luck in the future. And I can't wait to see what you do.
Let's do it.
All right, man. If you want to support this show, there are two ways to do it. You can make a simple donation by going to thaddeusrussell.com/podcast, Or you can become a supporting listener of the show and a member of the Unregistered community by going to unregisteredunderground.com. When you become a supporting listener, you'll become a member of a private Facebook group where every single day we talk and argue about the issues and ideas from the episodes of the show. You'll also get discounts on Renegade University videos and courses, including the upcoming webinar on postmodernism, and on our new unregistered merchandise. Again, to become a supporting member of the Unregistered community, please go to unregisteredunderground.com. This was the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell.